Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our City Council budget session. We'll go ahead and get started. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Adamson? Here. Bray?
Here.
Gina?
Here.
Johnston? Lurick?
Here.
Manon?
Here.
Flash?
Here. Thank you. We'll jump down to agenda item number 2. It's fiscal year 2019 budget development overview. Finance staff will give a brief overview of budget development items related to the creation of the city's fiscal year 2019 budget. Department presentations will be given at this time. Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning, Ashley Welsh, Senior Accountant. We just had a little bit of an update that I wanted to share with you guys. For the FY18 budget, we applied for the Distinguished Budget Award through the GFOA, which is the same place that we get like our CAFR award, and we did receive the award. So we should be getting a plaque, and we're going to do a little, news release on it, but we're pretty excited. So there's 14 mandatory criteria within that you have to have in your budget to be able to get this, and so we rated proficient in all of those. So we're pretty excited. The budget should be out on the website. I'm going to check again today if you guys want to look at it. It's just a little bit different. We kind of changed how we put it together. Makes it a lot easier for citizens and you guys to look through and kind of get an understanding of what we have in our budget for the year. So just wanted to share that with you guys.
That's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
So good deal. Thank you.
Yep. That's all I have, so we can start with presentations.
All right. Well, we'll jump down to agenda item number 3, service report, level reports, Parks and Recreation Department Administration. John Banks, Parks and Recreation Director, will give a presentation.
Yes. Good morning, Mayor and Council members. John Banks, Park and Recreation Director, and I have with me.
I'm Kristen Davibatia, the Administrative Assistant.
And we'll be covering the admin division for Parks and Recreation Department first this morning, and we've got several divisions, and I know Council has a long day, so we'll try and move through it pretty briskly. But for the admin division, our purpose is to provide administration and oversight for the parks, recreation, zoo, and cemetery divisions of the department. Also to serve as a central information contact for all divisions, their operations and activities, and to provide long-range planning, direction, and vision for the Parks and Recreation Department. We do this by kind of providing the following services: plan, organize, and implement and manage the Parks and Recreation services of the city, provide effective administration, supervision, and direction and oversight for all of the divisions as previously mentioned, develop, implement, and oversee the department's annual budget, serve as part of the mayor's city management team to carry out council-directed goals and objectives, serve as a staff liaison to the city's Parks and Rec Advisory Board and Golf Advisory Committee, also to develop and administer agreements with various user groups, concessionaires, and other entities for yearly use and management of city facilities. And this year, more so than others, establish applicable fees, facilitate city code updates, and develop and implement department policy and procedures to facilitate use and enjoyment of city facilities, programs, and services. And that document is being reviewed now, and we're looking very much forward to bringing that to council in the near future. For fiscal year 17, we had a final budget of $189,500, up slightly in fiscal 18 due mainly to benefit and salary increases. We've got 2 full-time employees in the admin division, myself and Kristen, who is allocated at 3/4 time for the admin division and also provides some assistance in the community recreation center function, which is allocated for about 1/4 of her time. We do not have any part-time employees in this division, although we oversee all of the revenues generated. This particular division does not generate any revenues. Some measures of effectiveness in fiscal 17, Kristen and I managed our budget to 97% of budget expended. We have a really low administrative cost in relation to the overall Parks and Rec budget overseen, so about 3.8% versus the total budget, so a very good value in our opinion. Kristen and I managed all of the department's budgets, divisions with, of course, the supervision of the division managers and superintendents and supervisors to just under 96% of budgeted amounts. And very proud of all of the divisions for our targeted fee increases. We're very effective in fiscal 17, and we ended up exceeding revenue projections by about 5.7%, which gave us a outstanding year as far as building fund balance and trying to get that back up to the 3-month reserve. We were able to build over $145,000 in fund balance in 17, so we had a good year in that regard. Some of our key accomplishments for the admin division, we led the efforts to complete the CRC lighting upgrade and gym floor and basketball hoop replacements. If you haven't been over to see our new gym with our maple flooring and our new hoops, it's really outstanding and popular with the community. We've got a solid group of regulars that can't live without coming in there a handful of times a week, so it's really popular. We negotiated in 17, well 17 was the first year and it continues, an agreement for the Bannock Historical Society to assume the operations of the Fort Hall replica, which is kind of a natural with their proximity to the fort, and it also frees up some budget for the Parks and Rec division and lets council have some more flexibility as far as where to put those dollars or pull back. It's a cost savings to the city. We negotiated and facilitated a public-private partnership agreement for Caldwell Park Reflection Garden project. If you'll recall, that was Mrs. Janet Schubert and the historic neighborhood residents that kind of came together and pooled a good amount of resources, about $35,000, to provide this amenity for the community, and it's just gorgeous if you haven't been over there. It was finished a little late last year in the fall, so we did fire it up, but it was getting kind of cold, so we had to shut it right down. But it's fired up and working well, and if you haven't been over there, please stop by. It's beautiful, and I'm really high on these types of arrangements because the city can realize these significant amenities at no cost, except for staff time and kind of facilitating it, so it really is the way to go. Starting in 17 and continuing this year, we negotiated and developed an agreement for contracting out the concession services for Ross Park Aquatic Complex, and the benefit of this being twofold. We had some staff, bless their hearts, that were, especially the upper management staff, that were stretched really thin trying to do everything over at that facility. So we pulled back a little bit of that responsibility and contracted it out to a third-party entity at a cost savings to the city, and then also allowed the staff to kind of concentrate on the safety and operations of the aquatics complex, which is our main focus anyway. So that's working out well. We also identified a long-term solution path for the ongoing Riverside Golf Course water delivery system issues, and with our study session last week, we'll continue to work with the water department to bring that solution to fruition and solve those problems. I also serve as representative for the Southeast Idaho United Way, Valley Pride, the Pocatello-Chubbuck Auditorium District, and the Greenway Foundation's Trails Working Group, which keeps me busy. And I apologize, I've got a little bit of a cold here. My kids are carriers. Whatever they bring home, I get it. So, our top issues and concerns, this is a bit of a repeat of our concerns last year. We do have what's getting to be, in some areas more than others, kind of an aging parks infrastructure system. And at some point, I think we need to have a plan to kind of deal with these aged amenities who are kind of reaching the end of their useful lifespan. I'm very happy to see that starting with this year's fiscal budget process that we're developing a 5-year capital improvement plan to try and get out in front of some of these needs for not just this department, but for all the departments, and then, work on some type of priorities and funding mechanism for these concerns, because as time goes on, they just kind of bubble closer to the surface where you need to deal with them. So that's kind of my main concern in the Parks and Recreation Division is, a lot of our older amenities that are reaching the end of their useful lifespan. We're going to have to either improve them or replace them, and having some kind of a set plan and funding mechanism for that.
Okay, so the numbers for Parks and Rec admin just have the step move increases. Doesn't look like there was any change in insurance here. And then they kept everything flat within the operating lines. So like John said, there's 1.8, 1.75 people that are billed to this department. Are there any questions on any of that?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, we'll go.
And for Parks and Recreation admin, we're not seeking any additional budget authority. As mentioned, we're about 3.8% of the total Parks and Recreation Department budget over the divisions, and the vast majority of that being mine and Kristen's staff time and benefits and whatnot. So there's not a whole lot else to the budget, and we're not seeking any additional authority. So.
Sounds great. Any questions?
Well, you mentioned the aging infrastructure in the park system. Apparently that report was prior to my coming on the council. Is there something out there we can look at?
There's a number of things, and I'll touch on them in some of the other presentations. Things like the Ross Park Aquatics Complex slide comes to mind. The resurfacing of the Ross Park pools come to mind. We've got some park, play equipment that's pushing 20 plus years old, and it's safe and it's usable, but it's dated and it's reaching the end of its useful lifespan. We've also got a number of pavilion amenities that are they're hanging tough, but they're aging and they could use some refurbishments. Things like that. We've got in the zoo, I can think of our walkways are kind of crumbling and in need of being regraded and replaced. So just a whole host of different things, and we'll outline all of them in that 5-year plan for council's consideration. I'm sorry, Roger, did I?
Clubhouses.
Clubhouses, absolutely, particularly Riverside. And we'll also be touching on that in the July budget presentations. So.
Any other questions? Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. All right. So moving on to our parks department.
Brett Hewitt, Park Supervisor. Me and John will kind of be back and forth on this one a bit. Start with our mission statement in the Parks Department: to enhance quality of life by providing and maintaining parks, beautification areas, and recreational facilities. Service summary here: parks and beautification area maintenance. 26 parks we maintain, 251 acres. Also another 100 additional undeveloped acres we oversee and manage. 40 beautification areas, including greenway areas, for another 51 acres. Some of our parks facilities, we've got 16 shelters throughout the parks. 12 restrooms we maintain, for a total of 302 park system acres maintained. Some other stuff we maintain is 21 playgrounds, 26 ball fields, 11 soccer fields, and 4 tennis/pickleball courts. We do help with the maintenance of the aquatics complex, which includes 5 swimming pools. Help out with the Nordic Center, zoo, skate park, information center building and grounds, senior center building, Fort Hall replica, and the Old Town Pocatello, or Pocatello Junction, I guess they call it up there, or we refer to it as. We also help out, like I said, with the zoo, doing some of their, helping out with larger maintenance projects and some of their capital project assistance, I guess, as well as the animal shelter on that. Not as much now with the newer building. It runs a lot smoother as far as building maintenance goes, opposed to the other one. Also, the golf courses, some of their larger projects, we've helped them trim trees and remove large trees in any way we can out there. Other services provided throughout the year, snow and ice removal on sidewalks on city buildings, Christmas lighting, plan, design, and complete in-house capital improvement of city facilities for parks and support of other department divisions.
I'm sorry, Ashley, just a real quick seconds on some things that Brett mentioned. Some of the highlights of what the Parks Department has been able to accomplish for the city is within the last, I think, 2 seasons, 3 new permanent restroom buildings spread amongst the 2 golf courses. Also, in the fairly recent past, last several fiscal years, a redo of the maintenance building over at the Riverside Golf Course, and also the big one, in my mind, the largest need in the park system was a permanent restroom building over at our Lower Ross Park facility, where like I've mentioned, if we have 10 special events during the summer, 9 of them are at Lower Ross Park, and we were operating out of portables for many, many years. And if you haven't been over there, the Parks Department just did an unbelievable job building in-house that restroom building. It's really, really nice. So congratulations to them. Our budget for the Parks Department, our fiscal 17 final was $1,981,000, just over, and our fiscal 18 budget is up just slightly to $2,070,800. And again, mostly increased benefit costs and salary increases. We're, unless I get surprised here, I think we're flat in the operating lines. We've got 13 full-time employees, and during the busy season, spring and summer, we bring on about 37 part-timers. And for discussion a little bit later in the presentation, that translates into another 14 full-time equivalent employees for 4 to 6 months of the year, 5 to 6 months of the year. Our 2017 revenues were just under 80,000, and we're predicting roughly that same amount, up just a little bit for fiscal 18. And we can move on to the next. I'd like to talk about some measures of effectiveness. The National Park and Recreation Association does an annual performance review, and what they do is they gather national data and create a database from any and every municipality within the nation. And they come up with measures of effectiveness and agency performance in a whole myriad of areas. For 2018 study, which covers the year of 2017, I thought 2 of the most telling measures of efficiency for our Parks Department are cost per acre of land maintained and operating expenditures per full-time employee. And going on to the next page, we've got a couple of charts that kind of outline how we compare to other municipalities of similar demographics in the nation. So our cost per acre of parkland maintained, you can see Pocatello Parks Department comes in at about $6,560 per acre, which is right at the median for all of the different municipalities in the nation. And then coming on down to operating expenditures per full-time employee, again for that 251 to 1,000 acre demographic category, we're well under the median as far as cost per employee for getting all the maintenance, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I think the most important one is we're certainly not overstaffed with full-timers. We try and bring in part-timers and not have to bear benefit burdens and things like that to accomplish what we can during the busy seasons, and that keeps our cost per employee really competitive. I'd also like to mention that our cost per acre of land maintained, that $6,560, please keep in mind, as Brett had mentioned earlier, that in addition to I guess just staff members on large gang mowers for your OK Ward parks, the large open green spaces, that we have a whole host of specialty facilities and playgrounds and buildings and aquatics complexes that the Parks Department is also helping to oversee and capital improve. So that $6,560 per acre becomes even more impressive when you look at it in that light. So I did want to mention that.
John touched on a couple of these accomplishments in the last year. The highlight for me and for our department, I'm sure, was the adding the bathroom to Lower Ross Park. It's the largest bathroom we've constructed in-house. Like John said, entirely in-house other than plumbing and electrical. But like you said, if you get a chance to get out there, take a look. It's not worthy of a grand tour, but stop in if you're
Oh, I don't know.
Maybe it is.
Caldwell Ballpark, we upgraded one of the concessions there, added new electrical, got it up to health code standards, and so they can better serve, particularly during the Grays games, which are quite crowded. So that flows much smoother for them. Center Street interchange, we installed curbing on the north and south west faces, revamped the drip system, installed crushed lava rock. Sister City Park, that was last year as well. We took out the old timbers around the playground and added and the sand for the surface. Added a cement retaining wall around it with some seats. Also added engineered wood fiber, which is a much safer surface for users. And then we resurfaced the pools and spillway at the Simplot Square, which I think opened in 1990 and it had never been done, so it was sorely overdue for that.
Can I touch on one more thing? This is the last, I'll harp on this one, but on the Lower Park, Ross Park restroom, I'm so pleased with the Parks Department staff. We were able to, with council's generosity, with the capital contingency funds, build this thing in-house, and it wasn't done in a month and a half. It took close to a year because we were using in-house staff. So they come and they provide their expertise, kind of working around all of their other duties. That's why it took so long. But we were able to accomplish that really excellent permanent restroom building with 2 ADA handicap family restrooms and then a full-size men's and separate women's area for about just over $100,000 in parts and materials, and then absorbing the labor cost. I would estimate if we were to contract something like that out, it would easily be double and probably more of that cost. So congratulations to the guys.
Moving on to some of our issues and concerns. Some of our equipment needs, we'd like to look at shooting for a track steer, small track steer, landscaping tractor. We've got a wheeled steer now. It's still in relatively good shape, but during summer months it's moving constantly every day. You almost have to schedule ahead within our department and prioritize to see who gets to have it, I guess.
The large area gang mower, if council might recall, last year you guys were gracious enough to let us purchase a gang mower that we were in need of with capital and contingency funds. And then starting this year, we started allocating a $20,000 chunk to try and get out in front of the next purchase, which will be, we estimate, in either fiscal year 21 or 22, depending on how much lifespan we can get out of our oldest gang mower. So even though it is stated as a need, this is already something that has been built into the budget for this year, and we will be in perfect position when the time comes and have the money allocated. We won't have to ask for an additional allocation. So that one's kind of in the hopper, even though it's stated as a need.
What's the estimated cost?
They're about $80,000, so it takes about 4 years to build up, and we have, our next one will just about be aging out at that time with, well over 5,000 miles on it, or hours on it.
So this portion would be 20,000?
20, so this would give us 40 counting this year, and then in 2 years, by the time we hit fiscal 21, we'll already have the 80, yeah.
Okay.
Some of our infrastructure improvements, a permanent restroom down in the Pleasureland area. If you're familiar with Ross Park at all, it's the old carousel down there. There's a shelter and playground there. It's pretty popular. The bathroom we'd like to construct there would be significantly smaller, maybe 2 on each side, so it wouldn't cost wouldn't be quite what we spent on the other. We'd really like to asphalt the road and parking lot area at Hammond Park. I don't know if you guys have been up there, but it gets used more and more all the time, it seems like, and that's just an old gravel road going back there. And
it's an adventure getting in and out of there.
Can be, for sure.
Okay, so we're going to go to the numbers. Overall, in the wages and benefits, you can see the $12,000 increase. Most of this is due to a retirement change. You had negative 21,000, so that's why it's showing a negative. There is step moves in there, but that change kind of ate up those costs. So, and like John said, we're at 0 for operating, just a little bit of movement in between the lines. They do have, like he said, the 13 full-time people, and then they're budgeted for $314,000 in part-time wages for FY19. Any questions?
We had our department staff meeting yesterday and some others, and we just lost our 42-year park superintendent, Alan Green, and we've got some other kind of 35, 40-year employees that are kind of reaching retirement age, and we kind of laugh with the retirement being up that you can hear kind of the whooshing sound from City Hall as they retire with these retirement payouts. So yeah, we're at that stage here in a handful of their careers where they are retiring. So. Yeah. And council, our apologies. We, in our haste to get these pretty comprehensive presentations complete, we got our wires crossed a little bit on who was going to provide this particular page and where it was going to be worked in. So we had turned in some staffing requests as part of the process much earlier in the year, and a couple of these requests were in the Parks Department. The first was for some Greenway Trails workers. What we've been doing is when we have time and resources and we're caught up on other things, which is turns out to always, most of the time, be very seldom, and usually on Fridays, if memory serves, we try to pull whoever we can and send them out to the areas of the Greenway that are most in need. As you probably already know, the Portneuf Greenway over many years, 15, 20 years, has kind of went out and sought grant funding and kind of delivered finished trail sections to the city. They've probably got, oh goodness, over $4 million of trail system infrastructure kind of in the ground. So we were hoping and felt it was fairly reasonable if we could get a couple of low-level part-timers that we could dedicate to maintenance of these greenways, so we didn't have to pull our staff from our parks and try and keep these really outstanding amenities for the community in decent shape. So we were asking for a little bit of bump in part-time staff, no benefits or anything, just a couple of low-level staff members that we could dedicate for this purpose, to the tune of about $11,500. And hopefully council also recalls it's been about a year or more where we've kind of taken the code enforcement responsibilities and directed them back out to the individual departments. The net effect on that of a pretty stretched full-time staff trying to perform their parks maintenance duties is I've got a park supervisor who's pulled away quite a bit from his regular job to try and deal with the code enforcement issues. We thought it might be a good idea and a reasonable ask if council would consider giving the park supervisor some help with a code enforcement assistant. Again, part-time, just a handful of months a year during that really busy growing and maintenance season to kind of help shoulder the burden of these types of responsibilities. And then also, if they're not busy with the code enforcement responsibilities, we can get them on a mower or helping with weeds or whatever. And that was, we estimated that at about another $5,300. So those were the budget authority increases we were hoping to accomplish.
So the code enforcement, is that when somebody's not taking care of their own stuff?
Yeah.
Or is that when the city's not taking care of its stuff?
This would be for residents that are not taking care of tree overhangs or sight lines or these types of things on private property. What we do is we, in the past, we've either reached out personally to the resident or notified them via mail of the violation and that they would need to take care of it. It invariably seems to become kind of a cumbersome process, And what I was trying to get to is having someone that has the time and is dedicated to that purpose to try and get out of the paper business and mailing it and make respectful contact with the resident right up front, explain to them the problem in a really tactful way, and work to a solution right there on the spot. And if the Parks Department, if it's as simple as, bringing a ladder and trimming up a few branches, boy, that's time well spent, rather than trying to mail 3 or 4 letters and follow up and this type of thing. So that was kind of the train of thought with that person. The difficulty is that, and it's Brett. Brett is the park supervisor that takes care of that. He does take care of it, but it pulls him away so much from his dedicated park crews, which hurts out in the field.
So I'm trying to see the chain of command. So does the code enforcement, when they tell you that somebody's not responsive, then they get you're the enforcement part of it, so to speak? Or
well, I think code enforcement, anything that has to do with trees or kind of certain pre-established parks and recreation areas of responsibility, they just forward it to us, and we take control from there. So they're kind of farming it out to the appropriate department rather than handling it in a central location. So no contact has been made at that point. It's simply forwarded to us, and we take it right from the start.
So if it's a tree, for example, you guys take it?
Yeah.
If it's a sidewalk, somebody else takes it?
Yes. Depending on what the issue is, yeah. If it's regulatory signs, that would be the street department. So we decided that, and Tom and I talked and kind of clearly delineated where the responsibilities lie, and code enforcement just farms it out to us. But I'm trying to get us to the point where we're not mailing letters, but we're knocking on doors and very respectfully and politely explaining what the issue is and working with the resident to either gain compliance or solve it right there on the spot and be more efficient.
Are you then billing the resident for the services provided?
We haven't been. If it's as simple as kind of breaking out a ladder and taking 5 minutes and doing it, it just it seems like that's money very much more well spent than trying to follow up and preparing and mailing letters. I think we come out ahead. That's certainly, I guess we could, but we hadn't really talked about that as of yet.
So if there's a lot that needs mowing?
If there's a lot, we would work with the resident to get it done. But a lot of times, well, maybe not a lot, but more than you would think, you come to a resident who has no idea they're not in compliance, and maybe they're elderly or they don't really have the means to do it. So trying to be good neighbors and provide the service for the community. If we can just solve the problem right there in 10 minutes, we try to do that, and then it's done.
So if it's weeds and things like that, though, that's not Brett, that's not Parks.
We would work with the resident to try and get that done, or if they're not able to do it, maybe hook up with Valley Pride and try and get a volunteer effort over to help them out or something to that effect.
So you don't do kind of the abatement type of stuff?
No, the streets department has an abatement crew. We've done a few, but the streets department got some resources to hire an abatement crew, and they go out and take care of those at this point.
So I guess my question would be, how do we track all of this stuff we're doing? If you're doing one job and another department's doing another job, how do we know the impact that it collectively has on the city?
That's a good question. I know we track hours, every contact that we make with a resident and every service that we perform, we track our own. I'm not sure what the other departments are doing, and Mayor, you might know better than me. I'm not sure if code enforcement's keeping a general tracking. We can certainly forward all of our stuff to them, but
we've just had the departments tracking them and making sure that we knew what it was costing the departments.
Well, but I mean, collectively, we're getting a little bite here and a little bite here, and sometimes it's hard to see what the whole meal was.
Sure.
And somehow I think we need to do that, because first of all, it gives us an assessment of the size of the situation. Second of all, I think there's more that we could be doing, because I see when I drive up in my truck, Rick's got a big truck too, there's a difference in keeping limbs cut where a car can look under them and where a truck can look under them, you know. And the 8-foot canopies often reduced to 5.5 feet. So I would just, you know, somehow we got to get on top of this because it's a safety issue as much as it is an aesthetic issue in many places.
Sure.
Mayor, we'll continue to kind of track what we do, and what we try to do is assign kind of a expended staff time and resources to solve any particular problem, and we can come with kind of a fiscal year total for those purposes, and maybe code enforcement can pull it all together, or however you guys think is most appropriate.
We'll figure out what we need to do, because we'll have parks, we'll have streets, we'll have code enforcement,
Sure.
and code enforcement kind of does their thing, and that's their job. And so when you add code enforcement, you're going to add their entire budget for code enforcement into that, but engineering, planning, and stuff. So all the departments that are tracking it, that.
Well, we need to get it collected, and code enforcement look like the place. If they've referred it, then somehow you refer back to them what it cost you.
What's been completed.
On an annual basis. I don't think we got to micromanage it day in, day out, but when we come to budgeting, it would be good for us to see the total that we're expending in all these areas.
I think we'll kind of see what that looks like as we're moving forward because of little things like this here. We got a $5,300 ask because that's what it's costing, about $5,300 this last year, from what I understand. Is that right, Brett?
Yes, give or take.
And so, I think you're right. If we can put it all in one spot, it's nice to know, and we'll be able to have kind of an idea of what it looks like at the end of today, or no, there'll be some others with streets and engineering and stuff. We won't have all those, but it's a good idea to have an idea of what it looks like collectively. So.
For fee increases, we had a pretty comprehensive set of adjustments in our picnic shelter fee structure during fiscal 17, where we went from a kind of a single fee structure more to a resident, non-resident, profit use, non-profit use, to try and delineate between the categories. And we're pretty satisfied that that's new enough and still relevant enough where no increases are needed. We feel that it's good to kind of maybe try and get a little bit more out of the non-resident groups, or the groups that are using the city facilities for personal profit or business profit. And we're comfortable that we can at least go another year with the current fees without having to increase those, having been so recent.
So any questions? And we also just need some guidance on those positions if you want us to put them in tax solution.
I think we've just been parking all the positions in
For the
a
most
category
part, yes.
called positions, where we review them all collectively.
Okay. So we will move those to tax solution. Any other questions?
John, one of our neighboring cities is going to start closing parks and selling off the land. They've discovered that a number of their parks aren't being used as much as they anticipated they were when they were developed. Mm-hmm. Do we have that problem?
You know, that's a tough question to quantify. I know our parks are heavily used in general, just by when I'm out and about and I see them, particularly our larger, more community parks like your Ross Parks and OK Ward and Caldwell and Alameda. Some of the smaller pocket parks, I would suspect, don't get as much kind of consistent use. It's as compared to kind of NRPA national standards. As far as number of park acres per capita or by population, we tend to be on the lower end of that as compared to the national average. So with that said, I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but if it was a direction that council wanted to go, we could certainly try and keep a closer look on it and maybe do some consistent multiple points of the day inspections and kind of gauge use and come up with some trends for council consideration. My gut tells me it might be a little dicey. It's, which one do you pick? I mean, if you pick one that's in a certain neighborhood, does that irritate or alienate the neighbors in that particular? It's a tough choice when you get down to it. But if council would like that, we can certainly, start kind of tracking them to see what the use is actually. But we do compare on the lower end as far as the national average of park acres provided per capita. So.
Well, somewhere in here too, you listed 51 additional acres that you maintain.
Well, we don't maintain them. We just kind of manage them. So like the back outskirts of Lower Ross Park is a big area that we're not mowing or we're not weeding, but we do manage the area with stockpiles and supplies and other things.
So do you maintain the area right out here with the flowers and stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So would that be part of that 51 acres?
No, that's included in the maintained acres.
Quick question. How many part-time employees do you usually bring on?
For parks, it's 35, 37 per season, and they would start, help me, Brett, probably middle April-ish.
Yeah, anywhere from now, sometimes even mid-March, mid to late March, depending on when the weather breaks, I guess.
So we've got a combination of what's called seasonal employees, which can work any amount of hours over a 6-month period, and then variable hour employees, which can work longer periods, like 8, 9 months, and then there's certain numbers of hours that they can work. So it's kind of a combination of those two over the course of March through October-ish, sometimes into early November. Mm-hmm. So 35 to 37 at various stages of that time period, the growing season.
Thank you.
You get the same people each year?
A lot of them are returning.
A lot, yeah. Still have plenty of room for the the high school kids that do the weed pulling and the trash pickup, which is a great summer job.
If they're good, we love it when they return because they're trained already and they know what they're doing.
Save you some.
Yeah, and we get quite a few of them back.
I think your kids can work for the city.
Okay.
You certainly can't tell who spends the time outside.
Probably spends a lot of time on the golf courses. What it looks like.
That's coming up.
I got to go check those trees out over there. So.
Rick, I'll have to wear shorts one day, then you'll really be able to tell.
That's right. Super. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brett. Well, Council, this has multiple divisions in our Recreation and Zoo Idaho department, so we're going to take turns kind of tag teaming this. And Lance, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Lance Clark. I run the Outdoor Recreation Division. I pretty much deal with things that aren't balls or water. So if we roll forward, John's got a slide here, and then I think it's my...
Yeah, our purpose in the Recreation Department, we strive to serve all residents of the Pocatello and the surrounding communities by providing quality recreation and education programs and safe, well-maintained parks and rec facilities, striving to enhance the quality of people's lives, provide the benefits of leisure and open space, and serve as a source of community pride. So that's our mission, and hopefully you guys have noticed that a couple of us, we thought it might be a nice idea to have one nice shirt that we could wear to meetings and whatnot with our Play Often, Live Better logo. So this kind of, our new branding slogan kind of matches our missions.
Within that, my division is fairly small, but we manage some acreage. The City Creek management area is 3,000 acres. The city owns that property. It was given to us by the federal government as a watershed. It's just outside of downtown. Within that 3,000 acres, there's 52 miles of trails. That doesn't include the roads. And we estimate that about 50,000 people a year use that system. It's a huge draw for Pocatello, and it's a bit of a management process because you have several different user groups in the same area. The Mink Creek Nordic Center is up Mink Creek, East Mink Creek. It's 1,500 acres. We don't own that. The Forest Service owns that, and we manage 1,500 acres of it under a special use permit. We have groom trails up there in the winter, and then we have other activities like our Thor obstacle race in the fall, and we're up there pretty much all summer working on it. One of our main uses of that area is virtually every 4th and 5th grader in the city goes there for a field trip in the winter to snowshoe or ski. So we host about 1,200 students a year up there, in addition to all the day users. We also manage the Frisbee golf courses. There's one at Ross Park, there's one at Sister City Park, and now there's 2 at the Nordic Center. Those were built last year with grant funding from the Sunrise Lions Club and the Port Neuf Health Trust. We offer the Fun Run Series, which is 1 race a month, May through September. 5K, 10K, and Mayor K are the distances available.
The Mayor K is a lot shorter than the 5K or the 10K. I'm just going to throw that out there.
The Mary Kay.
That's right.
The Mayor K race is pretty popular with the 8 and under crowd. And there's a surprising amount of trash talk that goes on.
There actually is. There is.
A new metric measurement.
Yeah.
Right.
Last year, the fun runs averaged about 600 people per race. They pay between $14 and $18 a piece to do that. It's a good program for participation in health. Our obstacle race called Thor at the Nordic Center draws about 300 people. Those people pay about $50 each on average to participate in that race. So that brings us in about $10,000. Our Just Cause Half Marathon is about 450 people paying between $30 and $50 each to run on the road, which, if you think about it, that's a pretty big accomplishment to convince people to do that. Because really you can run on the road for free the other 364 days of the year. So we also run a lot of other miscellaneous programming options. One of those is rock climbing, which has about 700 participants. We rent equipment out. And our other big money maker or money consumer, depending on the year, is our Teen and Tween program, where we take kids 1 day a week between ages 9 and 15 and just keep them busy during the summer with outdoor activities. So Outdoor Rec covers a lot of ground.
Lance, do you have a theme for your Just Cause? Not only do you charge people $50 to run on the road, you get them to dress up.
We make them dress up too. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a real marketing accomplishment.
It is.
The power of persuasion is strong with this one. We do have a theme, but we don't announce that until July. So
okay.
You just have to
we'll wait.
Really wait.
Council, we were thinking maybe a pirate theme and wanted to get your guy.
I think he's actually had a pirate theme before.
We've done that. Of course, if it's runners, you can't just say pirate. You have to say pirate booty.
That's right.
Serve pirate booty at all the aid stations. Are there any questions from the council about outdoor recreation? I know it's kind of fast and furious.
You won't answer my question of the theme. So.
I said council. That's specific.
And the trash talk continues.
Lance, can you hang out just a sec? I just wanted to touch on one thing on that Thor race. Really proud of Lance on this one. This is one of those programs that we were able to kind of introduce into our existing staff structure that took the place, kind of subbed out for was it the marathon? Triathlon event that was dying on the vine a little bit participation-wise. I think we think the market is a bit oversaturated. So Lance came up with this Thor trail race. We had 200 participants in 17, and I think it's already well above that, and the race isn't until September.
Yeah, within 72 hours of the race being over last year, of the 200 people that registered, 160 were back in. So I think that speaks well for it.
Is Thor an acronym?
It's not. It's a god.
Yeah.
What's the race structure like? Where do they just run the Nordic Center?
So we run the Nordic Center. We have a 10K loop up there, a 6-mile loop, and we have 25 obstacles spread out throughout the loop, including carrying rocks, throwing spears, climbing a rope. This year we built gigantic rubber band guns, 10-foot long rubber band guns, and you have to shoot targets with them.
And your wind chimes, I tested those out.
The wind chimes. So every year we plan on subbing in 4 or 5 new obstacles to keep it fresh. And,
If you're interested to try a few of these obstacles, join the fun runs, and they have a trial
Yep.
and error
Oh, okay.
portion of
yeah,
that
at the
afterwards.
finish line of the fun runs off to the side, we set up an obstacle so that people can get a preview of what they're in for when they give that race a try. And the mayor's always an enthusiastic participant in that.
Always fun to try to do those.
We have some walls you have to climb over, and he's just throwing little kids over like you wouldn't believe. It's great. So.
Mostly the ones that were trash talking earlier.
Yeah.
And where do you find all this information? Like, where is it on the city website? Is it on the parks website? Is that where it's at?
All of so it's in our catalog that we produce, the physical paper magazine that comes out twice a year, and then it's on that is published to the city's website, and then on the parks website, which is a subcategory of the city's website, is all our registration. But the main way you find out about it is show up to one thing and we'll like twist your arm to sign up for the next thing. So once you're in the system, you pretty much get an email that will never go away.
You're in. Once you're in, you're in.
Yep.
Thanks, Lance.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Lance has really hit on something with this. This is very popular, and we see it as a good service for the community and also a good revenue source for years to come. So.
I'm Brian Lohman, Team Sports, manager, director, whatever you want to call me. I've lost track of how my title's changed over the years, so, but I'm still here. As far as the team sports division goes, we have youth programs and adult programs. If you've got kids, grandkids, neighbors, most of them have been in the program and have had to deal with us. So we have a flag football program for 3rd and 4th graders that precedes the tackle football program that's run by a private organization. And we run Bannock baseball. We absolved that about 5, 6, 7 years ago, whatever. And now we're more and more the main driving force in that. Basketball, we have youth basketball in 2 different divisions. One is a junior jazz program that we became associated with a few years ago again, affiliated with the Utah Jazz, and it's been a very successful, well-received program, and I think our numbers show that that's been well-received. This last year we had 1,122 kids playing in that. They all get a shirt with Utah Jazz affiliation in it, so they feel like they're part of the team and whatnot, so it's really well-received. We have a competitive division as well. We call it D-League for teams that want, or dads primarily, that want to put together super teams and play more competitive league. Junior Jazz is more of a recreation league, but between the 2 of them, we had nearly 1,600 kids playing. Volleyball for our girls, we had 230 girls playing in it last year. We also introduced another level in that's not up there, that's 8th and 9th division, 8th and 9th grade. And it's going to take a while for that to build up. We had enough that we would have had to refund like 20 girls' registrations, and we thought, if they want to play, who are we to tell them they can't? So we had 2 teams play each other for the whole season, and they loved it because they got to play. So that was, and that in fact is what recreation's all about, so people can play. So we did that, and we'll continue to do it as long as there's someone who wants to play. We'll put something together for them. Softball for adults, we had just short of 1,400 participants last summer, and about 330 some odd in the fall. And the trick there is you got to finish before it gets cold and nasty in late October. So we have to divide those seasons up. One is a longer season than the other. Like right now, we just started our summer program this year. Basketball, we offer both men's and women's league. We had 235 men's players, and we had 57 women's players. Volleyball, we have co-ed and women's league. Women's league had 53, co-ed had 136 participants, and adult co-ed soccer in the fall we had 82 players, and spring we had about 65 players. And that pretty much talks about our programs. I would like to say that without the cooperation of School District 25, none of our indoor programs would be available, for we do not own a building to host that many games. I could go into how many hours a day that all adds up to, but we play every open hour that the school district allows us to get into their buildings. So we coordinate with them very carefully for practices, game times, around concerts, and things to avoid user conflicts. And I think through the years we've developed a very good relationship with them, the middle school principals mainly, and the main office in coordinating all this so nobody steps on anybody's toes. And it's a real good experience for, we hope, the majority of the people that sign up for our program. We're driven by volunteer coaches, and so I'd like to say out loud to them, if any of them are watching today, that we really appreciate them, because without them we don't go either. And so there's a lot of hours tied up into this, but mainly it's for the enjoyment of anyone who wants to come out and have a good time and play. I think the mayor's, I know I saw his name on a softball roster, so he's.
I am on a roster.
The question is when does he have time to come out and play? But I know he's intending to when that one open spot.
That's right.
Is open. So.
Bummer, all those games are Thursday night games.
I know, right?
Who scheduled those anyway?
I think my team asked you to schedule them on every other Thursday night.
You have as many Thursday games as possible.
That's right.
Does the school district charge for the use of their facilities?
They have charged us for many, many years, and the mayor and I were able to meet with the new superintendent, Douglas, it's escaping me, Hal, and Bart Reed, and negotiate a waiver of that fee starting last year. So we have and I've been trying to build this relationship with Bart. He's a council-appointed member of our Parks and Rec Advisory Board. We have a really good relationship with the school district. They give us undeniable first priority for our programs and all of their indoor facilities. We reciprocate on our outdoor facilities for all their ball games and soccer matches and whatnot. And it works really well. In fact, in the policy document that will be coming to you shortly, I took a crack at kind of memorializing that relationship and understanding of first priority. So we really value that, and I think both of us, the school district and us, would be really hurting if we didn't have that good relationship. So.
Does that include the golf courses as well?
Golf courses they also use for their teams, yeah.
For your adult teams, do they need to come to you fully formed, or can you sign up and put people together if they don't have a full team?
The adult programs, as you said at the beginning, they do need to come together formed as a team. Okay. Now, if an individual in an adult program wants to sign up, we'll take their names down and then make them available to those teams, because inevitably someone's going to come in and say, do you know any girls or any guys that are looking for a team? Boom, here's the list, you call them and whatnot.
So you do keep a running list?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. So people can find their way on teams. Like right now with our softball, we had to first get all of them scheduled for their billion games. I think we scheduled over 1,000 games for this summer, just so you have an idea of how entailed that becomes. But then we then will produce a list of all the team captains, their level of play, and a phone number, so people can come in and kind of pick their own poison, if you will. If they know they're a moderate player, they can pick the middle division and say, well, here's the group you probably want to start at. You don't want to go up here into the killer league. So.
And do you have any tennis
We don't run a tennis program. Pretty much those needs are being met by the country club as far as I know. We've tried to do that in the past, and we were pseudo-successful at times depending on who would want to do that. If you had a real good person that would come in and knew how to run a program, it was decent, but there's just not that many people that want to do that here in Pocatello that aren't already set up out there. So we tell people to go that way. Now, on another note, we work with a group, the USTA group that plays in the evenings, and they schedule with us times for their league. And so we direct people that direction as well. And then through that affiliation, they can usually find people that would probably help them set themselves up with some sort of training, lessons, whatever.
Okay, thanks.
Council members, just wanted to mention in regards to tennis, I'm sure everybody's heard about pickleball. It's kind of the new very, very popular thing, particularly with the senior demographic. So we've gone as far as to dual stripe our tennis courts out at Raymond, and we've got a lot of NKA activity out there for large groups. We've also dual striped our 2 racquetball courts. They're undersized courts, but we get a steady group of regulars that come in and utilize that. It seems that tennis maybe is waning just a bit. Like Brian mentioned, we've had a hard time getting enough people to make it worthwhile for the instructor, and they bow out on us. Mm-hmm. But pickleball seems to be thriving, and the MEC, I'm sure, will vouch for that too. They've got a solid contingency. So.
And you probably have enough with all these other things rather than throw another whole season of tennis in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are pretty busy all the time. And I remember years ago when one program would end and we had a couple of weeks in between to kind of put that one to bed and warm the other one up. Now we're pretty much cross-connected all the way through. So come to my office and you can see the different sports based on what's in or not in my office at a given time.
Watch where you step, though.
Yes, true.
But I can sure get you lots of uniforms that have not fit people.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask?
Yes.
I thought about.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I love what you guys are doing out there. My kids take part in a bunch of activities. Although I do think tennis would be beneficial because it's more accessible when it's through the city. I think sometimes the other organizations that are providing it's a little costly to the citizens. And where are our tennis courts? I'm sorry, I don't know where our tennis courts are.
Raymond tennis courts are the only ones the city owns.
Okay.
And those are at Raymond Park.
Okay.
They're on the east side of the river,
Okay.
not over on the Raymond Park side of the river.
Does the school district own the ones behind Pokey then and
Yes.
the ones at Highland?
Yes, and during the summer, we kind of work in conjunction with them being the school district overseeing what's going on at their tennis courts at Highland and at Pokey. We don't have any connection with the courts that are out at Century.
Thank you.
All right, super. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stacy Van Kirk, Recreation Manager for the Community Recreation Center as well as Ross Park. So I got a few things here for you. Tell you a little bit about the Recreation Center. We kind of count it in participant occurrences. So we've had over 133,000 participant occurrences. How many times we actually interact with someone in classes, how often they come to our facility. If you haven't been to the rec center, we have all kinds of amenities. We have our pool, hot tub, weight room. We have a stretch room, racquetball. The racquetball courts are kind of multi-purpose. We also have a volleyball and pickleball that you can do in those racquetball courts. We have a multi-purpose gym that's used for basketball as well as dance and aerobics. And
what's volleyball?
What's volleyball? It's volleyball in a racquetball court. So you can actually play off of the walls. It makes it different. It's fun. It's fast-paced. It's not quite like volleyball.
Okay.
We also have steam room, sauna, eucalyptus for adults. It's just a well-rounded facility. So our memberships ebb and flow because we don't have any sort of contract. So we have everything from you can get a membership for a month, 3 months to a year. But when we do our counts, we have about 1,300 members. 1,300 members. And when they scan their cards, we get about 62,000 scans a year. So we're pretty busy. Daily admissions, people can either pay daily, punch cards as well. So beyond memberships, we still have all those occurrences. 6,316 individuals pay just a daily fee, $5 to come in, $3 for youth or seniors. Our punch cards, we sell about 158 total punch cards. Those are people that just want to attend classes, don't really want to do anything else. And then we see about 1,347 people doing that, scans. Swim lessons are huge at our facility, and you can see how many participants, 1,645 participants. But because we interact with them on a multiple, they come for 8 classes, you can see the participant occurrences are pretty large, 33,000. Dance, gymnastic classes, same thing. We have quite the operation. We offer them for 2 seasons. We don't run dance during the summer. We just run them in the spring and fall. We have about 762 dancers that we run through our program. They stay in for a 4-month course and then do a recital at the end. And we usually see them once a week unless they sign up for multiple classes. Aquasize is a big program for mostly our senior population, but we do have evening classes too that draw anyone from after work as well. We hold about 15 to 20 classes a week, seeing about 1,800 participants in that. And then we have personal training services. We did lose our old personal trainer, but we have now hired a new one. So we'll see our average clients coming back up. We don't pursue personal training probably like you see your private gyms, but we do have someone there that can help them go through programming and then can also work on programs with them. Questions about Rec Center? You want to say anything? Got it? Okay, Ross Park. For the 2017 season, our attendance was 55,217. I would say we're probably the biggest attraction place for the 3 months that we're open during the summer, and we bring people in from all over the state as well as out of state. We sold 372 passes last year. We restructured our passes several years ago. In the past, we were selling maybe 10 to 12 passes. Because of our new restructuring, we're selling a whole lot more passes. So it's good to see the same people coming over and over again and using our facility. Ross Park has highly trained personnel. Right now we're in that training process of our lifeguards and staff. It's about a 2-week process to get them trained and ready to go for opening. We open May 26th this year. We offer a fun, positive place for people to gather, and we're open 7 days a week. Our hours do vary a little, so we always have those posted on our websites. We're open from Memorial Day, and now we close the Sunday after school gets out because of the staffing issue. Everybody goes back to school or back to college, and unfortunately we don't have people making their careers here being lifeguards, so we don't have adult lifeguards that aren't in some sort of school program. And we are able to retain some of them to stay on for our recreation use, but it's all evening. So our amenities there, if you're not familiar, we have the 8-lane pool, 50-meter pool. There are always 2 lap lanes available for people to lap swim. The rest of the pool is just open for fun. It does have the deep end, so a lot of kids, teenagers like to hang out in that area. We do have like the 0 depth wading where it goes from no depth into the deeper kiddie pool area. And it has the interactive play equipment. We have the activity pool, which is what you see in the middle of the lazy river. That's where the lily pads are. And then a couple basketball hoops where kids, probably more older adults, can play basketball. And then we have our lazy river, which people just enjoy floating on. And now we're using it for exercise. We'll kind of touch on that in a minute. And then we have our large grass area and our locker rooms and concessions. Our teen splash dances are very popular. We'll be holding 3 of them again this year, but last year we held 3 events and we had 731 teenagers come, and what they do is they swim and dance, and we have a DJ, and it's just chaos for 2 hours, and they just have a great time. And it's, it's controlled chaos. It's fun to see the teenagers in this town have a place to come have an outlet that is safe and somewhat drama-free. When you have teens, it's never completely drama-free, but it is somewhat drama-free when we have all the lifeguards providing supervision. And then we have our family nights. We know that not everyone can maybe afford Ross Park all the time. So the family nights are really great because it's half-price nights on Mondays and Wednesdays. Come between 5 and 8. You can have just as much fun in that time for half the price. So, and then last year, we kind of just launched off out of the blue, lazy river walking, resistance walking. First of all, just being in the water is resistance. You add the current, and now you got a little more resistance. We started, I was thinking maybe we'll get 30 people, maybe. And before I knew it, we had 100 people in the water walking. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. So obviously it's a need. People who have joint or mobility issues, this is a great place to start walking. For people who are athletes, and so it's for everyone, beginners to advanced. If you're an athlete training for runs, we see them in the water too. So this year we're expanding and adding 5 days a week in the morning and 2 nights.
You could go beyond the arcade.
That's right.
We want to see y'all there. Heidi comes.
I'll be there. I did it last year.
I know, you did great.
Yeah.
Any questions about Ross Park?
You do a great job, I'll tell you that.
Sounds so exciting. I can't wait to go.
I know. It's going to open on the 26th. The weather needs to change a little for us.
Warmer.
I know. So we're ready though.
Yeah, Council, I just a couple of very quick add-ons. Wanted to congratulate Stacy. This is another one of those, we always ask the staff to kind of look for new and creative ways within the current staffing structure to offer more services and potentially derive some more revenue. And you just never know what's going to hit and be a success and what's not. But this clearly has, along with Lance's Thor race. So like Stacy said, we're expanding this, and it's a good source of revenue. Also, our 2016 season attendance at Ross Park was about 10,000 less. Some of that due to a tough weather year, but you can see we're up about 10,000 attendance for Ross Park, and we were up about 2,000 participant occurrences over at the Community Rec Center. So we're going in the right direction. It was a good year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Stacy. I'll very quickly just touch on a couple of our other divisions, the golf courses. So our Parks and Recreation Department manages, myself with the help of the Parks Division for maintenance and capital improvement help. We facilitate the use of the golf courses through a golf course concessionaire. We are in the 3rd year of a 5-year renewal. So this current concession agreement will go through the 2020 season. Last season, there were a little over 51,000 rounds played and almost 750 season passes sold. You can see that the trend is trending downward a bit from the last couple of years, and the golf course concessionaire has got some creative ideas that they continue to try and market to try and draw more interest in golf to the courses. But it's a really good relationship that few cities enjoy, and an unbelievable source of revenue for the recreation fund. So. We also offer our Fort Hall replica in Pocatello Junction, which we maintain ownership and have contracted out the operation services to Bannock County Historical Society at a cost savings to the city while still providing that service. And we also help facilitate the really popular municipal band concerts out at the Lower Rouse Park Band Shell. They're on Sunday evenings during the summer.
John, before you move on, I just might let you know, and if you'd let the golf concessionaires know, and maybe the Golf Advisory Board, I was last night trying to figure out how to hit a golf ball, and I was talking to the pro at Juniper Hills, And he said that he had just played in the Pro-Am on Monday, I think they had it. I look at our pro golfer back there. He's saying, yeah. And he said, he said that those courses are in better shape than he ever remembers them. And they are doing an incredible job.
That's great to hear.
And he just wanted to make sure I knew that it was really nice to see them in such good shape, and they really, truly are working good. So will you let them know that?
Oh, I will. Thank you, Mayor.
I appreciate what they're doing. It's in good work.
I'm going to take a little insertion time here. The clubhouses, we've had them in front of us, and we keep hearing that they should raise the money for the clubhouses, and that's not going to happen. I mean, it's been going on long enough. We're going to have to partner in some way to replace one clubhouse and then another clubhouse. And golf courses are one of the amenities that help attract business too. I mean, there's some work done on golf courses. So somewhere we've got to figure out how much we want to infuse the recreation budget with the money we make off the golf course, and how much we want to start to return to the golf course to help offset some of this expense of the clubhouse. That's a discussion we're going to have because Riverside Clubhouse is starting to settle. It's been there for years, but it's starting to settle now. And so that's going to make its lifespan even shorter. If you are up above it, you can see for sure that it's a barn. When you're close to it, it's not as obvious, but when you're up above it in the mountains, you can see that. So that's something we're going to have to address. I don't know how or when, but it's something we've got to put on our chart.
Councilman Bray, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Cheatham. We've talked a lot about this. Councilman Bray's our new golf advisory representative from council, replacing Councilman Moore. And we've talked an awful lot about this the last couple of years. And Billy Satterfield is one of our members, and with kind of his experience and connections in building and real estate, he's put together a draft of a pretty comprehensive proposal for council's consideration. I'm helping him him and I are vetting that, and we were going to present it to the full Golf Advisory Committee at our June meeting in preparation to presenting it to you guys for some consideration at our July study session. So it is a priority of ours, and we will be bringing forward some thoughts.
Sounds good.
Is there a physical plant reason why the drop in participation in golf courses? Is it a physical thing or just the sport in general?
Well, it's the sport in general nationwide. They've got some theories. We've got a really thriving kind of retired season pass holder population, and just awful to say, but people age out and they just can't do it anymore, or God forbid they pass, and so we've. 4Golf suspects that we've lost a good number in that regard, but I think it's a nationwide trend. That's why I consider us so fortunate to be in a concessionaire agreement like we are, because it's a profit center for us, whereas a lot of these courses that are run by the municipalities, it's a loser. It's absolutely a loser. So,
is that trend in both courses?
It is. That's
evenly split.
That's both courses combined.
But is one course losing more participation than the other?
No, not that we've noticed.
I brought it up because next year for sure it's got to be part of our budget consideration. This year we don't have the proposal sending up, but next year it's going to have to be somewhat of our budget consideration.
When we do come for kind of final budget decisions, one thing I'll note to the council now as kind of a preview is I did take some of the annual golf course allocation, which has traditionally been in that $70,000 to $75,000 range, and we've been using that to repaint and refurbish the clubhouses, to redo the cart paths, to resurface parking lots, and this, that, and the other thing at the courses. And we're getting to a pretty good spot with the cart path renovations, and we've got the clubhouse painted, new air conditioners. So I've taken a $20,000 allocation and asked council to start earmarking that in a fund for the Riverside Clubhouse replacement. So no additional ask, just a repurposing of the traditional amount that we get to kind of start that process. So, but 20 grand, I guess, doesn't go too far for a building that we're estimating, upwards of $500,000. So, but it's a start.
Goes a lot further than zero.
Yeah. On our budget outputs, we had a fiscal 17 final of just over $1,800,000. We have got 4 full-time and 3 half-time employees within the recreation department. This would be excluding zoo, and those half-timers are housed over at the Community Recreation Center. During the busy summer season, a lot like the Parks Department, we've got upwards of 110 to 120 part-timers that are working out in the sun at the aquatics complex and all over town to provide our services. Our fiscal 17 final revenues were $1,288,000. We're projecting, roughly that same amount. We had a really good revenue year, so our projections are a little bit less, but we had a banner year in 2017.
I think it's worthy of pointing out your cost recovery.
Oh yeah, I'm getting to it.
Well, I think you didn't have it on your slide up there. You got it here.
Oh yeah. I'm really excited to present this to council. Again, going back to, I guess, the nation's most comprehensive database for measurements of Parks and Rec agency performance effectiveness, the NRPA's annual performance review, or agency performance review. 2 of the key categories for recreation department success are revenues as a percentage of operating costs or cost recovery, and revenues per capita. And we can go to the next slide. So I've been here, it'll be 4 years in November, and working with the staff, we always kind of internally had a goal of 70% cost recovery, and it was ambitious, and to a degree the stars have to align and we all have to stand on one leg to make it happen, but we made it this year. And I think our targeted fee increases for the fiscal year 17 were very effective, as we had hoped and planned. And I just couldn't be prouder of the staff to say that we, as a department, cost recovered at 71.4% this year, when the national average median is 28.4%. And the highest of achievers is 46%. So we're killing it in the recreation department. I think you accomplish this in a couple of ways. First, you provide really popular and well-attended recreation services, and then second, you're not overstaffed. And we're certainly not overstaffed. I think that's how we get these levels. But as far as the revenues per capita, you can see that we're just below the median at $23.54 per resident. So what that says is that our programs are really popular to a wide base. So we've got everybody and their brother is participating in our programs, which keeps our per capita revenue burden per resident down. So I hope the council is as pleased as I am with this. We just, we're really happy with the year that we had in 17. So.
Are some departments carrying others?
CRC, the Community Rec Center, had a great year. They were actually up in close to 80% cost recovery. I think a couple of reasons for that. We just continue to make improvements kind of incrementally to the facility, which keeps it popular and fresh with the community. And we also are coming on board with Silver Sneakers this year, where we can work with insurance companies with a small copay to draw more participants, and our class sizes just continue to kind of go in the right direction. So CRC maybe has a great year, and maybe adult softball didn't get as many teams as we had last year. But then the next year maybe it flips. So Lance had a great snow year up at Mink Creek, so that was good. Whereas Ross Park, we had a lot of rain days during 17. So it kind of ebbs and flows like that. But it's more of a we help each other out rather than one's falling flat every year. It's not that. It's everything kind of does this within the divisions, but collectively, I think we're doing really well.
That's great.
Some of our key accomplishments in outdoor recreation, Lance went out and solicited a couple of grants from Sunrise Lions Club and Portneuf Health Trust, and was able to develop and install 2 professional level 18-hole disc golf courses out at the Mink Creek Nordic Center. And we're really excited about this because now we're taking a traditionally kind of winter facility that we manage and making it more accessible and available year-round to multiple events. So now you can bike it, you can hike it, you can take your dogs for walks, and you can play some disc golf. So hopefully we'll draw even more people out there year-round to enjoy that beautiful facility. Team Sports worked in conjunction with the Parks Department to install some really helpful irrigation systems out at our NOP Park red softball field. So we try and do one of these a year, and what it allows us to do is to facilitate tournaments and things. Instead of hooking up to quick couplers and dragging out hoses and taking 40 minutes, you flip the switch, the heads pop up, you get a quick water, and you can get that field maintained for the next game. So it's a good investment. As mentioned earlier, we were fortunate enough to get some grant funding and donations from local residents for a brand new Maple Select gym floor and some new backboards and hoops over at the rec center. Rec center and Ross Park had no serious accidents or injuries as a result of Stacy's well-trained staff and also excellent health department records for the year. And I think I mentioned some of the things we've been doing over at the golf courses as far as refurbishing them. If anybody hasn't been out to see the Highland Clubhouse, we got it all repainted late last season, and it looks really good. So that's it for that.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. I'm Peter Pruitt, Superintendent of Zoo Idaho. We are one of the few indigenous zoos across the United States, and our mission is preserving Intermountain West wildlife and habitat through conservation and education. Quick about last year and in the zoo in general, we exhibit 109 animals, 43 different species, and on 25 acres. Again, outside of our contact yard with our goats, all of our animals are found within Idaho and the Intermountain West region. We also have quite a few different education programs serving the community. Traditionally, it's been mainly within District 25 and other school groups, but we're really reaching out into our community and opening up these education programs. Last year, we reached over 7,000 people through our education programs. Just to give you an example, what we're doing this year, over the winter, we started developing our raptor program. Those of you who were able to visit Athena, our red-tailed hawk, and Horace, our turkey vulture, here at City Hall a month ago or so, that's what we're working on. Speaking with Rachel, our education curator, for the month of April last year, we reached about 300 people and students last year. This year in April, we were well over 2,000 people that we've already reached with our outreach programs. And that's mainly due to our emphasis on our raptor programs. So those are growing. And of course, we've got plenty of volunteers and program hours. With that, we are gradually increasing that. We are stressing quality volunteers over quantity. And sometimes that means not all the adults and kids who want to be volunteers at the zoo really make it, because we want some of the best kids and adults involved with our volunteer program. Last year, we had approximately 30,000 people participate in the zoo, whether it's through attendance or events. Our Zoological Society last year was kind of really the first year where we had our Reformed Society, and they started really trying out different and new and unique events. So we really did up our event attendance, and our Zubu actually was the second largest Zubu event that I could tell of through the history of the Zubu event. So we really did have a great end of the season. We also work with a lot of organizations and people throughout the community. One of the things that I'd like to stress is we're kind of changing the paradigm of the zoo from the past. And one of it is we really are putting a lot of emphasis on conservation and education. We work directly with Idaho Fish and Game, not only to acquire animals for the zoo, but as an example, last Friday, Fish and Game called us and they had 3 confiscated fox kits that needed homes. And so we're sending them to Indiana to the Potawatomi Zoo. So that's another, not just bringing animals into the zoo, but being able to find these animals, places for these animals that can't go back into the wild elsewhere. 2 years ago, we took a moose calf up to Northwest Trek in Tacoma. So conservation just doesn't stay within our zoo. We work throughout the United States on that. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we just applied for our 4th Partners for Fish and Wildlife grant, and hopefully we get that. That will be a pollinator and monarch butterfly house starting next year. Our wetlands exhibit, when that's done, it's going to increase our partnership with ISU basically for research. Grad students will be coming in and starting to work on that. And last year we partnered with the Natural History Museum on a billboard. This year the Society's working with the museum to do a joint membership where you'll have a severe discount if you buy a membership that includes the museum and the zoo. So we're kind of incorporating them, and we are actually working with now some private businesses on conservation. We're working with the Monarch Building. They want to add a monarch butterfly house into their facility as they move along, and we might not have the direct expertise within the zoo, but I've got the connections that we can facilitate the expertise. So as we work on our butterfly house, the Monarch Building will be learning from us, and then we'll transfer that over into that building. So conservation, our goal really is to move conservation throughout the community in Pocatello and beyond. This is our operating budget is right under $670,000, and as we move forward, you're gonna see really just how we function as a zoo compared to other AZA accredited zoos, and there's not very many zoos out there that are under $1 million in operating budgets. So we've got some challenges with the budget, but we are moving forward as quickly as we can, and we're making significant improvements. We do have 6 full-time employees, 1 variable hour, and as the summer rolls around, just like the rest of Park and Rec, our seasonal staff moves up. Revenue, we were slightly under, but the nice part is our society is starting to really roll. We just opened up the annual campaign where 100 from 500 people asking $100 from 500 people. Within 2 weeks, we had already received $1,000 off of that campaign. We received a $10,000 grant from the IF Foundation, and we're starting to gain momentum with that. So hopefully our revenues will go up drastically as we move along. So I noticed we're no longer the Pocatello Zoo, so but we got to do a little bit of editing on that. When the next page, if we go to the next page, this is really the telling mark. When I sat down and looked, there's approximately 230 accredited zoos across the United States with AZA. They gave me the opportunity to search for zoos that have an annual budget of under $1.9 million. Of all those 230 zoos, there are only 2 zoos, the Santa Fe Teaching College and the David Traylor Zoo of Emporia, that actually have an operating budget under $1 million. Of those 230 zoos, 2 are under $1 million. And so what we're doing is quite unique. And I could not find the actual numbers of animals from the Santa Fe teaching and the David trailer, but I've got their species. The Santa Fe has 63 different species, and the David Trailer Zoo has 64. Half of Santa Fe's species are reptiles. 2/3 of the David Trailer Zoo are reptiles and birds. They tend to be a little bit cheaper to take care of than elk and bison and bears and cougars, etc. So they're managing on limited budgets by the types of species that they exhibit. As an indigenous zoo, we have to exhibit the megavertebrates found in Idaho, and that means the larger critters that can get a little bit more expensive. I'll always add the Idaho Falls Zoo and Zoo Boise as comparisons. It's really hard to compare the two zoos to us because, again, they're a different type of zoo. They each have, Idaho Falls is closing in on a $2 million operating budget, and Zoo Boise is, of course, closing on a $2.5 million operating budget. So, we've got a lean machine here at the zoo, and we're really working within that budget. And I'm proud of my team with everything that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
I have a question for you on that last slide.
Yep.
What would you say is the main increase in like Idaho Falls' budget? I mean, is it mostly in their facility? Is it a lot of marketing?
So
where would you?
What it is when you look at both Boise and IF, they're both looking at almost a $200,000 and $175,000 increase in operating budgets. Boise is definitely adding. They've got some fundraising going on and adding some new exhibits. There's going to be the cost of actual just husbandry animal care. There's also some cost if they added additional staff. It's the same thing with IF. It very well could be just the cost of caring for the animals. IF is getting ready to break ground on a new education facility. I think all of that came mainly from donations and fundraising. So, it's hard to tell. Okay. But a lot of times animal care, it fluctuates every year. If an animal gets sick, cost of feed, etc., even electricity will go up. So.
Well, the reason I was asking is because I was just wondering, their attendance numbers obviously are a lot higher, and I know you pointed out they're a different type of zoo. They have some maybe more exotic animals or things that people are, interested in, but I think people would be interested in our indigenous animals as well. But could we benefit if we did have an increased budget for Zoo Idaho? We would see the offset in revenues.
Oh, definitely.
Where is the balance?
Definitely. I think.
Is there something that you would recommend to us?
As we look at increasing the operating budgets, and everything that we do at Zoo Idaho, we need to take a realistic approach to it. Mm-hmm. And yes, we definitely would. If we can start working on repairing a lot of our pathways, looking at increasing some of the guest amenities with an ADA slope. We definitely need more rest stops throughout the zoo, shaded rest areas, increasing our, for instance, when we finished our bison, pronghorn, and elk exhibits, 2 new exhibits, we didn't increase the number of animals we had, but we changed how we manage those 2 exhibits. And we did increase the workload because now we're able to manage the animals properly and offering them the best care. And when we changed that, it did increase the workload. So adding bringing back a full-time position would definitely help, especially if we get the exhibits built that we're planning on this year. We could add a potential 3 extra exhibits. So as we add those exhibits, we will need an additional full-time staff, and that would help improve the guest experience. But do we need to move up to $1 million to make this a world-class facility? No.
Yeah, Peters and his staff is in the process of kind of a very deliberate strategy to improve the quality of the guest experience with when they're renovating these exhibits. I don't know if anybody's been over there lately, but I guess the experience from the old bison pronghorn yard to where it currently is, it's like Peter and staff managed to take those animals and bring them right up to you so you can see them.
Yeah.
So kind of those efforts in multiple areas and exhibits combined with the staircase just got poured, if you guys didn't know, over at the new zoo entrance. So I think they're doing the last pouring today. It's curing, it'll open up, and then we will kind of finish that area with the rock hardscape and landscaping. And I think we're just this close to the new zoo ed building. We've got it all designed and maybe reapproaching some big hitters in town and getting a good donation. Just all of these things are going to, we hope and we anticipate, are going to blow up our attendance. And Peter and I have talked about this a lot during, I want to say it was 17, when times were a little bit leaner. We did give up a full-time staff person and tried to supplement it with part-time. We would like to, I guess, prove the worthiness to the council that we can afford another full-timer by letting the revenues justify it. So our goal is to bring these revenues up and then come with that ask. It's not an ask for this year.
Yeah.
So.
What's the trend nationally, I mean, I guess overall, in interest in zoos and attendance? Is that rising, or?
It's definitely rising, and it's rising very quickly. When about the mid of my career, there was concern because people are saying, well, now you can sit down and watch on the Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, and you can see these animals on TV. There was a slight dip, but people realized that watching an animal on TV, seeing a picture of an elk off of a video, isn't really the same thing. And the interests are coming back drastically because there's a lot of conservation issues and concerns. And there's a lot of species that are very quickly moving towards extinction. This summer, the northern white rhino was the first megavertebrate that went extinct in our time. We've got another, the Javan rhino is another one that will probably go extinct in the next few years. So people are really becoming aware of a lot of these conservation issues. And zoos themselves are changing, and they still have to have the entertainment factor to bring guests in, but they've moved definitely towards an education and conservation aspect of it. That's the great part. We're in a community of around 70,000. We have the ability to reach into the community and not necessarily wait for the community to come to the zoo. We are taking an active role within the community, conservation and education-wise. When you look at some of these larger facilities, well, even like Zoo Boise, it's so large that a lot of times they rely on tourism for a lot of their attendance. And I know the Idaho Falls Zoo does a lot because as they move into Yellowstone, they move into that. When we're able to reach into the community, that is a much longer term effect because adults and kids really take ownership within the zoo and they come back and back. And yes, most definitely zoos attendance nationwide have been drastically increasing. So here are some of the accomplishments we had last year. We got the two elk, the elk and the bison pronghorn exhibits. Those are two very large exhibits, and that really took the majority of our time last year. We are finishing the final draft of the master plan, getting it into a PDF document, and we completed design specifications of the wetlands. That actually, the dirt will be moved the last 2 weeks of June. We're finishing off cleaning everything up. Just so you know, there was a lot of galvanized posts around that exhibit that we've taken down. 8 acres and all on the perimeter, so there's a lot of posts there. And these guys can attest at the horse pasture how many posts we've got piled up over there. That's ready to go. We received the 5,000 Bay Corps grant, which helps funds first and second grade great field trips to the zoo, and then in the fall, outreaches to the zoo. We've got the billboard with the Natural History Museum. The Connections Credit Union did a Zoo Free Day sponsorship last year. They are doing the same sponsorship again this year, so that's fantastic. And with our breakfast event, Roar and Pour and Oktoberfest, they turned out, we were really quite happy with the Roar and Pour and the Oktoberfest events. And as soon as the society started advertising for Roar and Pour, within a couple days there was already 94 people interested in coming to the event. So we really do expect that event to grow each year annually. So it's a start, and we've got some really exciting stuff in the future.
Some of the issues and concerns, back to the recreation department, a couple of the key ones are the Ross Park Aquatics Complex, replacement of the water slide. So we'll be entering our 19th season this summer at that facility, and this slide was actually brought in from the Westwood Mall, apparently way before my time, but apparently the slide itself is over 30 years old. It's safe. Prior to last summer, we did some really key kind of structural reinforcements, and it's very safe, and it will provide some more lifespan. But I think that need certainly needs to be considered kind of on the horizon as something that we're going to need going forward. Also at Ross Park is the resurfacing of the pool areas. So with the facility opening in '99, we haven't done this, and we've got a couple areas in particular, the Lazy River and the splash pool, that are, they can be a little bit abrasive on people's feet. So we've gotten some cost estimates to refinish those two areas, which are in the most need of about $110,000. That's a local quote. We suspect that if we expand our search more into Salt Lake and some other areas, that we can drive that price down a little bit with some competition, but that's a good rule of thumb, $110,000. And then the remaining areas, which have some more lifespan in them, an additional probably $250,000 over some period of time to refinish those. So we'll be in the 5-year capital improvement effort that finance is doing. These projects will certainly be included as something for the council, just to food for thought to have on the horizon of our needs.
I thought I was done. Almost.
Can I make a comment about the slide while we're talking, while that was on that? I think that we need to, you keep bringing up the slide. We know it's an issue. We know it has problems. We keep kicking that can down the road, a little bit. I think that we need to look seriously at whether we do the whole amount or some portion that we just start setting aside for that. I think we need to look at taking some of that from some capital money or doing something, but we know that's going to come, and it's going to, I think we need to do something about that. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that, but.
Staff is also hopeful that we can inspire, who knows, one of the big businesses in town or somebody to become motivated to maybe for naming rights, give a significant donation, and we'll be seeking those opportunities as well. But I'm feeling a lot better after the efforts last year to kind of structurally reinforce. It was never unsafe. It just, it's getting old, so you fix it here and there, and it's not much to look at or write home about, but it's safe and it's functional. So I do think we need to get out in front of it, but I know there's so many other competing needs. Just so the council knows that it is still safe and it's functional, but it needs to be on the horizon, and I agree we should start planning for it.
I just hate to wait until the point where it really has an issue and then we have that whole thing. So that's why I was thinking maybe we could start setting aside a little bit, but.
Sure.
Well, I think there was some discussion about maybe putting in a different amenity too than that, just because of the traffic and uniqueness, that if we had a different amenity, we might be a more on and off stop.
Yeah, we actually, council had allocated us, I want to say, give or take, it was roughly $15,000 for some design services to get a cost estimate. We were actually able to not have to incur that cost. We got with one of the vendors, and we're able to kind of get them to come out and kind of provide a version of those services. And we were looking to kind of spice things up. So we were proposing to go to a 2-slide structure rather than one, and possibly down the line another amenity of some sort to kind of keep it fresh and draw more people. But yeah, we were thinking of kind of upping the ante a little bit on that slide when we had the chance.
Okay, and then there's a little disparity between what we attract to the pool and what we attract to the zoo. Have we ever thought of a 2-for-1 package deal that we do through our tourism bureau or something like that?
We've discussed, yeah.
We we have our kind of special discounts program. If you buy I don't know, a day at the zoo or the aquatics complex, you get half off of the other facility. So we do have some of those programs in the fee structure, but we haven't pursued it with the tourism though. So we'll look into that.
And that kind of goes down back to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so we just I pulled out basically the 3 major hindrances to our pursuit towards AZA accreditation, associations, zoos, and aquariums. The first one is really truly the black bear exhibit. That will stop us cold. It is a facility that has been outdated probably for the last 20 years. We are also with the USDA and their Animal Welfare Act, speaking with our inspector last year. They're in the process of kind of revamping a lot of the requirements with bears in general. Right now, through a lot of hard work with our keepers and training, we are able to kind of be right on the okay side of these new regulations as they're coming in. We also have the ability to do some slight modifications with our coyote facility to move cougars up there, and then that would expand the black bear, so it gives us more time, but it is an exhibit that desperately needs to be addressed sooner than later. And we already know with the Zoological Society, as soon as the gift shop is done, that is the very next capital campaign they'll be jumping into. That one won't be as hard to raise. Gift shops have a tendency to be less exciting as exhibits, so it takes a little bit more time to raise funds for that. The black bears, I think the community will definitely jump in. Last year and this year, as I've been talking to our guests, and they're seeing the work that we're doing, they always go, "This is exciting. What about the black bears?" So they're very aware of that facility. So that we will be working in the next year or two on updating that. Of course, our pathways. Over time, asphalt wears down. We don't have really any ADA paths within the zoo, and we've got an idea on the south slope that will definitely address that relatively cheaply. Once the wetlands are done, we will really have taken care of all the pathways up top, because we will be putting in a brand new asphalt pathway up top. So at least the upper level will be taken care of. There's some spots down in the lower level that we'll need to address eventually, but not as much. The pathways, it's the ADA paths getting up to the upper level. We have a facility that we use for quarantine. It's not the greatest because it's in the middle of the upper level. That means when we bring an animal from outside, we still have to move through the zoo. And the reason why we quarantine animals is in case they bring some type of disease or parasite. We've got a confined facility. We don't want to bring any problems into the zoo, but having quarantine in the middle of the upper level really doesn't do us any good. We need that moved to the perimeter of the zoo, so when we bring them in, they are isolated and localized. And that's really just a simple building. It's not going to be full all the time. Basically 4 stalls with some concrete floors and a little bit of outdoor access. Nothing fancy on that one.
Okay, thank you.
So when we look at these three issues, how far along are you on the gift shop and it being paid off?
So we've got, the society is very confident that by the end of this year that we'll have the last bit of money raised for it. We've got the design down, we've got the structure ready to be purchased. We just need a little bit extra money, and then boom, as soon as that money comes in, it starts.
Okay, so that's an in-house project between...
Part of it will be in-house, yeah. So it's a log cabin structure, and we'll work with Park and Rec and Brett's crew, an amazing crew. They've done some fantastic work for us at the zoo. And, we'll have to have someone come in to set the log cabins up, but then, Brett's team will help us within the inside, getting all the carpentry work done on the inside. So part of it will be within in-house.
Okay, so we're going to team with the Zoological Society.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Zoological Society is the organization that's raising the funds for it. Yes.
Okay, so and they will that will be in place within the next year.
We hope. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember Ray, they made a commitment for, I want to say it was $90,000.
Yeah.
And then council had given the okay for them to purchase kind of the decided upon and council blessed design. So they're committed to that. I think we're short on, we have to keep accumulating money for the construction of the building.
Yeah.
But we're close.
So the society has approximately $75,000 in their account already dedicated to the gift shop. And then the additional $90,000 to $100,000 will give us that buffer for construction and a little bit more.
Okay, and then how much of the path repair, because you said these new things coming on, how much of that is really what we have to raise then?
So within the wetlands facility, we're attacking it with the grants on, hopefully that will cover most of the cost. We will have the grading done, the road base done. We might have to look at raising some money for the actual asphalt. But within my operating budget, I have every year $25,000 for capital outlay. We're hoping to take advantage of that. And the goal really isn't to come in and say, council, I must have this amount of money. We're trying to work within our operating budget and the society to find the best way possible without really requesting or asking for a significant increase in our operating budget.
But you're addressing a lot of these things with the grants that you've received.
Oh, absolutely,
We've got equipment that's being borrowed to us and stuff. And so really, truly, you're just telling us that this is a need, but you're not asking for this money.
No, we're not asking for this. No, not one bit. This is
just what I'm trying to
and so there's no ask right now.
I'm trying to quantify what the real need is, though.
Yeah.
Well, we're chipping away at it. It's with this expensive equipment for the wetlands, we're going to ask them to do some significant grading up top. So we would have asphalt costs, but we're hoping to be able, as we get towards a little bit later in fiscal, to hey, we have the resources and we will put that towards asphalt. The big, I guess, cost at some point is kind of from that lower level to that upper level and creating ADA in that stretch there, and then the lower level. So the plan is to kind of chip away at this. We understand that we're in limited resources and it's an unrealistic ask. It's we put a cost estimate on the total fix of 150, but we're chipping away at it each year.
But you're also working on the ADA with this grant and the borrowed
the equipment and stuff
like that.
Hoping that we've got a little bit
really
of time.
A lot of this is being addressed. It's just a matter of it's there, and you wanted us to know that
these are the needs
out there.
Yeah, and that we are working hard to address.
We would probably have the money for the gift shop had the Zoological Society a few years ago not given money back for some stuff if they would have worked with them and talked to the council beforehand and stuff like that. So there were some setbacks, but we're moving forward and we're about ready to do that and move forward. And so that's good. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this for sure if you're not having a big ask.
Yeah.
So let's
I'm just
move.
trying,
Let's-
we're looking linear future. I'm trying to see how this spaces out.
Sure.
So with the zoo, there's, I don't, two hands to juggle everything that we're trying to accomplish really doesn't work. I have to juggle on 10 fingers. And what it is for me, I don't look at it linear, because when an opportunity shows up for me to accomplish a need, we're going to take that opportunity. So it's really hard to go A, B, C, D, because it might jump from A to D, back to B, then to Z. When the opportunities come up, we're going to hit them.
But there again, there's no ask right now, so
Yeah,
let's
no.
not continue on this discussion because there is no ask.
No.
So when there is, you'll be back in front of us. Okay, thank you.
We will move on to the numbers really quick. So the recreation fund has an overall increase in salaries and benefits of $41,530. They're actually down in their operating lines overall. Part of the reasons why this is so big is you do have the 1.5% increase to part-time, and they do have a lot of part-time people. So just really quick, you can see the overview of the employees in each department. This isn't including zoo. I'll go to zoo here in a minute. Do you guys want to go through each department division, or do you just want to move on to zoo really quick?
I think just quickly go through all of them as you're going down the list here.
So outdoor rec, flat, small increase due to set moves in medical insurance. Team sports, pretty much the same thing. They do have a decrease in their overall operating. And this could just be a movement between lines where they have different department divisions. They can move between department divisions also. The pool, flat, small increase. The rec centers, let me see, it looks like they had a change in benefits. Could have possibly been that somebody came off of benefits, so that's why there's a negative number there. And then we have the golf and the Fort Hall division. These are basically flat. The only increase I think is due to the interfund charges that we charged through that process. Same thing with the summer productions division. So moving on to zoo. They did have a really big increase in benefits medical due to a retirement, so we budget for the full family there. So that's why there's such a big increase there. Had an overall decrease in operating, and there are 7 full-time employees there currently. And we're gonna go over part-time here in just a minute. So is there any other questions on the numbers?
Nope.
Okay. Do you want me to start with this one?
Sure.
Okay, so in going through the budget for FY18, we did notice that, as you could see in their part-time hours, they only had about 9,000. There was a reorganization in the zoo. They basically had a full-time person quit, so they moved it to part-time. So in the budgeting process, in the actual process in FY17, we did a budget amendment to kind of fix that and move between the lines. Moving into the 18's budget, it looks like we missed putting it in the 18's budget, so finance is asking that I guess we bring them back to whole. It was just kind of something that when we're doing all these changes at a later time, it got missed. The way that we've gone to fix this is now any changes to any personnel we're having due in January so that we don't have this problem again. But that's something that finance is asking council to put in the budget so that they can remain whole and keep their operations to what they're currently doing.
The second request, Mayor and Council, was for a groomer, operator, trails coordinator for outdoor rec. Just a tiny bit of background on this. I guess when this first hit my mind, my kids were playing hockey, and I won't make this long. I dropped them off. I come over to the rec center. It's late Saturday night to grab something, and lo and behold, there's Lance Clark on Saturday night at 9 o'clock getting ready to go out and groom trails over at the Mink Creek Nordic Center because we had a heavy snow event. And something struck me that maybe I'm asking too much of our full-timers and stretching them too thin, and maybe causing 6- and 7-day work weeks. So I, in talking with Lance, this was asked that we would like to have, in addition to kind of snow grooming, depending on the event, just in general, keeping the trails at Mink Creek and City Creek in good shape and kind of overseeing all of that, and I guess not burdening Lance with that and maybe creating, more than 5-day work weeks for significant times of the year. So that was that ask. The second one is actually a lot less. It's about a $3,000 ask. It's a combination of two existing positions that are currently in the budget, combining them into one, serving the CRC and the Ross Park functions, and increasing the responsibility ever so slightly for a few more hours a week. So those were the ask, and I guess they'll all be considered by council at the appropriate time, but that's a little background on those.
So do we want to go ahead and add the part-time labor in and then do the other ones on tax solution, or?
My recommendation would be that it was in 17, I would add it back in. It was an oversight. I would put that back in, and the other two I would put in the tax solution. That would be my recommendation.
Is that groomer, operator, trails coordinator a new position?
That would be a new position.
Responsibility of someone existing?
I'm not sure if he has anybody that's currently on staff that could maybe rise to that level, and then we backfill at the lower position, but it is a new position that would serve both Mink Creek and City Creek.
Most of our parks departments work with mostly part-time people, and so we have very few full-time employees, and most of them are part-time, and so.
The issue with that is that there's a certain skill set with this real expensive equipment, and there's only, is Lance and nobody else that knows that we trust with the, $80,000 groomer. So that's another reason why it's a little, we can't, it's not level one, it's a little higher level of a part-time.
That's why I was wondering, if somebody who's already trained.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the correction stays. The other two move to our new person category.
Yeah, okay. We're just going to go through some.
Yeah, council, you're going to be presented with the full fee adjustments. These are the Parks and Rec divisions. You've got exhibits E, N, and O, and a couple of highlights that I'll just note. We have seen a kind of a decreasing tail off in our number of adult sports teams, and have also received some input from the teams that maybe, how about you decrease the number of games and decrease the price? So this is a very hopeful revenue recovery strategy. We're a bit on an island here. I don't sense that we're drawing teams from Idaho Falls or other cities to come this far, because they're playing in their leagues. So as we've kind of watched the trend go down the last couple of years, we're trying to kind of stem that tide and be creative, reduce the number of games, and hopefully end up with more revenue as a result of that. That was one I wanted to mention.
If you reduce the season, you might be able to get some tournaments.
That's another thing that we're hoping. We've got multiple tournaments now. They're not huge revenue producers, but that was another aspect of that.
If we break even, the city comes out ahead.
Mm-hmm. You can just go to the last page. Again, these will all be coming to you. I know we're going a little bit long here, but I did want to mention on this Exhibit N, the replacement cost. So during the process of developing the kind of the comprehensive policy document, this was one of those ones that was kind of brought in to the policy for replacements and whatnot, and I kind of struck me, I don't remember seeing anything in the fee resolution on that. So we've had these in the rental document. So these are kind of existing things that we've been doing, and they don't happen, maybe once or twice a year at most. So it's minimal, but it's all of these fees here. There's nothing new. We're just getting them into the fee resolution as a result of an oversight.
Okay.
Were there some questions on these?
No?
Okay. All right. No questions.
Council, thank you. I know we were long. We've got about 14 different divisions, and thank you very much for indulging us.
Well, thank you. You do a great job. We appreciate it. Council, we are going to take a break. There is some audio issues happening right now, and so It's one reason why I want to move this along, because we're not exactly sure how long it's going to take them to solve those audio issues. And I'm not sure what was heard out there and what wasn't. And so we... Thank you for joining us after the break. I believe we've got the audio difficulties taken care of now, and so I appreciate Video Services jumping all over that and making that work and get fixed for us. So we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 5, service level report for public transit.
Mayor Council, Skylar Beebe with I'm the interim director with the Pocatello Regional Transit, or the Public Transit Department in the city. The mission of our department of Pocatello Regional Transit is to provide safe, reliable, efficient, and coordinated public transit to our customers while being responsive to user needs and careful stewards of our limited resources and of the natural environment. Our organization consists of course, the City Council, the Mayor. Under the Mayor, we have the Public Transit Director. Under the Director, we have our operations supervisors, administrative staff, and our maintenance supervisor. And then, of course, under those are operators, mechanics, fuelers, and bus cleaners. Our department consists of 61 overall employees, as you can see here, 19 of which are full-time. We have 1 half-time and 41 part-time. We have 2 different services that we offer in our department under the public transit realm. We have our fixed route services. This is open to the general public. Also, these services offer ADA access. So every vehicle that we have that operates under the fixed route realm can accommodate those with disabilities in every fashion. This service runs on the weekdays from 6:20 a.m. to 6:40 p.m. and then on Saturdays from 9:20 a.m. to 5:40 p.m. During the school year, this consists of 7 routes that are fixed and then 3 school tripper routes that just run at peak hours of the day. And then during the summer from June to August, we only have our 5 core routes that we're running. We always try to include these slides for our peer comparisons. This is the fixed route cost per hour, and you can see we have different cities around our area. So it's always good to show this because it shows that with our operating expenses that we have, we try to be as efficient as we can, and you can see through the numbers here. And so ultimately, this comes down to the types of vehicles that we're using. On all of our routes, we only try to put on buses that are needed on that route. So if it's smaller ridership, we put a smaller bus on. And so ultimately, we try to do the best we can to save the most money we can. This is the comparison for the cost per rider. Again, you'll see that this averages out to about $4.47 per rider. So what this shows is that with the vehicles that we have, the routes that we have, we're putting as many people on those buses rather than having a lot of buses out and fewer people on at any given time. The other service that we provide is the demand response. This is more specific to the ADA, the senior citizens. In most cases in the urbanized area here, they have to qualify to ride that service. That's a complimentary service that's offered with the fixed route service under the federal guidelines. So in the rural areas, it's a service that we offer that's, of course, separate from the city funds, open to any riders in that area. This service in town here, we also service the non-medical. This is the Medicaid clients. And this runs on the weekdays from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. This has to operate any time that our fixed routes are operating. Just to do a little comparisons with this service, this is a little higher than the fixed route, given our door-to-door services will always cost more than the fixed route services because you're transporting fewer people because of the needs. And so this is calculated by our overall operating expense and then, of course, the hours that we're running. This next one is the cost per rider. This comes out to about $21.30. And of course, I didn't mention, but all of these numbers are based on what we submit to the National Transit Database. So it gives us these numbers so we can calculate what our costs are. You can see we're pretty low there, which is another good thing. Again, we're sending as few buses as we can to accommodate the greatest number of people that we can. As we look back at our fiscal year 2017 and our ridership, we had a total of 290,604 passengers. This came out to just over 1,100 boardings each day. Some of the key accomplishments in our department that we've been working hard on is, of course, the reduced dependence on city match. That's always a vital piece to us, and so we're trying every way to be efficient. This last year, we replaced most of all of our rural fleet. That's really important because it brings down the expenses that come with older vehicles, with maintenance and everything else. If you've had a chance to look at our website, Rick Satterfield has done an amazing job with updating it and giving it a new facelift. As we've gone through this last year, we took every opportunity we can as we got feedback from the general public, as we got feedback from drivers, anyone that we could, to update or add information so that if someone wasn't familiar with the bus system, how to ride, how to get from point A to point B, all the information is there. And so we tried to really just lay it out and make it as simple as we could. Our travel training program and our open bus events, we kind of intertwine these. One of the things that we've realized is that the future of our ridership is really based around people knowing about us and knowing the system. And so we've made a lot of efforts in conjunction with the Southeast Idaho Council of Governments, a contract that we have with them, to do a lot of marketing. This is going to senior centers. This is going to a lot of the school classes between charter schools, District 25, going to veterans, a lot of different organizations, and teaching them about our system. We do a slideshow presentation, kind of teaching them all the ins and outs, give them the information. And then we also even take them in the circumstances that we can, we'll take them around on a bus and so that they get the full how to do it. We've improved our safety program pretty significantly. This is based around internal, how we handle different situations. Some of the requirements that we've been given under the federal government to have these safety programs. And so this has come a long ways. We've improved our handbooks and so forth. Another thing that we've done is we've increased our, this is our door-to-door passengers by 26 this last year. These are those that are certified riders, and so now we have a total of 1,131 registered and certified passengers. Some of the issues and concerns that always follow us is, of course, the grants and the reliance on the federal funding that we have. As you look across the United States, you'll find that public transit is very heavily subsidized with grant funding. And it's just the nature of it because we're a nonprofit, and ultimately we try to make it as realistic and feasible for anyone to ride, no matter what their budget is. And so that's something that we consistently worry about because as each year goes by with our formula grants, they base it on population, they base it on ridership, and so it has a potential to go up and down. And so it's always a concern that we have, and it's something that we always watch. Of course, the fuel and the fluctuating prices, as you've seen the pumps, that fuel keeps on going up. It's something that we do our best to accommodate for and plan for. As long as it doesn't go really crazy, then we're hoping that it will be within what we've got, so we try to plan ahead for that. Some of the other issues, concerns, of course, is capital. We've been working really hard to replace vehicles in our fleet. We've got vehicles in the rural area that we just replaced. As mentioned, they had anywhere from 200 to 300,000 miles on them. We've got vehicles in our urban fleet that are in the same situation that we're working hard to replace, and we do have some buses coming this fall that will help alleviate a lot of that. Bus stop improvements, if you've seen a lot of our bus stops, a lot of those have extremely old signs, so that's things that we're working towards to replace those. And then bus stop improvements across the street here, we have 7th and Sherman that should be happening this summer. And then our shop equipment, we had plans to replace a lot of that equipment. It didn't happen simply due to a project we had out at our facility, and it kind of consumed that money. So we are looking for grants that we can use towards more shop equipment. Hopefully we have some coming here in the near future.
So transit has two funds. There is Fund 8 and Fund 9. So you have rural, which is funded through grants and program revenue. So the city doesn't provide any funding source for this fund. So you can see there's an increase in personnel, medical benefits, and other. And then overall, they've decreased. Basically, we try to build this budget based on what grants and revenues we're going to be getting. So we just try to build it accordingly to be able to function within that. We did add, we were able to keep a little bit into their capital line in case there's any capital that comes up for them. But this is what they have built in their budget so that they can operate this fund. And then in the urban fund, this is where the city match comes in. You can see that there's a pretty big decrease here. We had a few retirements budgeted for in 18. There's no retirements budgeted for in 19. And then of course, just moving positions around from seasoned to new people is gonna bring that down a little bit. And then they have an increase here, but it looks like we just took it out of capital. So overall, they're pretty flat with their budget. They do have 16 employees in this fund. And it looks like with the increase to the wages, well, actually it's negative. I'm not sure. The city match was gonna go up by like $20,000 to help account for the grants and the revenues and everything that was going on with that. So we were told in the past to try to cover their increases in wages. They're not gonna get any additional money in operating, so that's what that one looks like. Do you guys have any questions on that?
Drop that just a little bit back down. A little bit more.
A little bit more?
There we go.
And we did kind of adjust the revenues a little bit, looking at what we were realistically getting. So that's going to have to be supplemented by grants and city match. So that's kind of why there's a little bit of a difference. Just trying to make sure we're keeping everything really tight into what we're actually getting.
What's the history of ridership, up or down?
The ridership has gone down a little bit each year. We're seeing a difference this year. It's actually leveled out and increased. That's kind of been a national average with public transit. It's kind of all gone down. And as you look at the overall history, it just does this. Sometimes when we see the higher fuel prices, we see more ridership. And that's probably the biggest reason why we're trying to do as much outreach as we can, and especially with our younger generation, to teach them that it's okay to ride the bus and knowing the bus. So it definitely fluctuates up and down.
What figure did you use for fuel costs?
Sorry, the what?
What per gallon price did you use for fuel costs?
I'll have to go back and look at that. I couldn't tell you exactly right now.
Any other questions on the numbers?
Are you concerned with the...
I'm concerned with what's happened to fuel costs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know as a city, we raised that up quite a bit this last year, and so it might be something you definitely want to take a look at and see what you did with your numbers there to go from there.
Oil's crept up to over $71 a barrel now in the last 2 weeks.
So it's headed north, it sounds like. Okay.
As far as our additional budget authority, we're not anticipating anything right now, so we're not requesting anything from the council. So we thought we'd try to make it easy on you. Just wanted to give you a little pie chart here of our overall revenues. As you can see there in the blue, that our federal grants is 64%. That went up from this last year. And so one thing that we do have is with the city match, we have about 17%, and then the different incomes that we have and contributions from surrounding communities, and those within here is about 19%.
In the past, we've talked about, we were providing that service into Chubbuck and they weren't fully covering it, but I understand they did increase a little bit. Are we now fully
They did.
covered?
They,
or do they still have a ways to go on that?
Yeah, so good question. They were for many years only contributing about 17,000. What we calculated is we were closer to the 80,000 range. So they raised that to about 40. Do you remember 40? I think it was 43. I was going to say 42. So about 43,000, and they've committed to continually raise that a little bit each year. And so I think they recognize that, you know, it's an importance to them and that they need to kind of help play ball with us. So.
Okay, so they didn't raise it up to the 80 this year then?
No, they just, what we asked them to do is raise it in increments to make it realistic and feasible for the budget. And so that's what they're committed to do.
Do we know what that increase is this year that they're raising it to?
I'm not sure. I'll have to check on that as well. I know what we had looked at was between 5,000 and 10,000.
I had a conversation with, and this was last year, with a couple of people on the Chubbuck City Council, and they were not aware of that, I guess, and so I told them they needed to pay more, and they seemed like they kind of agreed with that. So I thought we were going to come asking them for, you know, to fully cover their bases, since that's what.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have to follow up. This is discussions that we've had with the mayor. So
they get reelected.
Yes.
Yeah, they did. Well, they weren't up, or yeah, one of them was. But
Yeah,
anyway.
one was they did get reelected though.
Anyway, I thought they were going to increase it, I guess, a little more substantially than just $5,000 or whatever, you know, would be an incremental step. I kind of thought that was my understanding, and so I would be very interested to know that because, you know, it's great to partner with them and to help them out and work with them, but I think they recognize that they need to do their part and assist with that as well. So
okay. We have a number of slides here with our proposed fee increases, most of which on these are just ones that we wanted to include on that we haven't had on there. And so you'll see here, there's a couple of these, the first two that we've discontinued these. These are, one of this was a carryover and an oversight that this was discontinued a little while back, but it just never gotten took off the fee schedule. This monthly H-Route pass, we've discontinuing that because they all buy semester passes and it just hasn't been feasible to maintain a monthly pass because it just does not get used. All of these others are ones that has been normal practice. It just hasn't been on our fee schedule, so we're just making sure we got on there. On the next one, you'll see the first section here. This is our our premium service time. So this is our after hours, after normal hours. We've increased that, and proposing that it be increased from $4 to $5 in the evening time. This is just a very expensive service for us, but we're trying to accommodate those that do need the service. But we just wanted to raise it slightly so that we can gradually do that instead of impact them, you know, hard. And then the next one there, some of these is just slight increases. We discontinued, this is beyond our premium service, so this is some of our services that go like to the airport, which is very, very little used. On the next one, again, so this is just more that we didn't have on there that we wanted to make sure to include on our fee schedule. These last four slides, this is our advertising. This is one thing that we've tried to push real heavily as a revenue source for us. The only increase that we have with this is our full wrap. This is to cover the whole bus of our larger coaches. We'd like to propose to raise from the $800 to $900 a month. And then everything else that's on the rest of these slides, we wanted to open it up to all kinds of different options that are available to them to do part of a bus, the whole bus. Ultimately, because when we do a full bus wrap, it kind of wipes out a lot of people because they can't afford to do the whole bus wrap, which are very expensive, just the upfront cost. And so we wanted to make it affordable, but also give us more opportunities to reach out to more individuals for that revenue and advertising.
Does the advertiser pay the cost of materials and installation?
Well, all of that is the whoever is wanting the advertisement. They pay for all of that. So the only thing that we do is provide the vehicle to have it put on. So there's no expense to the city for any of that. And as well as removing that when the contract or the advertising is finished. Any questions on any of these slides or the?
No, I think that's a good idea on the wrapping. Quick question on the one fee increase that was the premium disabled and senior services that's going from the 4 to the 5. Does that correlate with your previous slide? Is that the demand response cost?
Correct, yes. So this is our door-to-door service, and this is just the services that are in the evening, evening time.
So because I was just noticing, it looks like we're pretty low. So even though the fee is increasing on that, it's still a pretty good deal compared to surrounding.
It really is, and that's why we kind of recognize it's an expensive service because we have a lot fewer ridership, but yet we have a bus and a driver out, and so it's just kind of making sense of the service we're providing.
Okay. Other questions? Looks good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Science and environment.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Hannah Sanger, Science and Environment Administrator.
Jeff Mansfield, Public Works Director and City Engineer.
So our mission is to manage the city's federal stormwater permit, achieve permit compliance, and water quality improvements. And we do this by, well, obviously managing the permit, but also serving as a science and environment advisor to you. And then as directed, implementing related environmental programs and projects related to those interests. We'll represent the city to stakeholders and agencies such as the EPA, DEQ, for instance, and environmental organizations. And we also facilitate a lot of outreach with our co-permittees, with the public, with interested community organizations, and on policy decisions. So we have 2 full-time staff. One is vacant right now, and in 2017 we didn't have any interns. Most of our revenue actually comes from tax-supported funds, but we do get revenue from our co-permittees, so Bannock County, Chubbuck, ITD, and eventually ISU all contribute for my time in managing the stormwater permit. And then we get a little bit of fee revenue from developers for erosion and sediment control. And we have been involved in mapping about 10 miles of stormwater assets and 5,000, 6,000 structures and over 200 swales. These are all maintained if they're publicly owned by the street department, and if they're privately owned by private entities, and that this department will eventually oversee that operations with private folks. So in 2017, we began implementing the Portneuf River Vision Study. So that included additional concept design work by Utah State University landscape architecture students, and you all came to the open house on, well, I guess that wasn't in 2017. Last fall, there was an open house here on the major concepts for the river. So more than just Centennial Benton, Old Town, North Pocatello, South Pocatello. And there was just a write-up in the paper about that. And then also working with ISU on identifying solutions for Marsh Creek. And so continuing that work that wasn't funded by the city at this point, but we were strong partners with them. Also, a big project is just continuing to implement year 11 of our stormwater permit. These are 5-year permits, so we've been on extension for a long time, waiting for a new permit. So coordinating with the co-permittees, beginning some integrated stormwater master planning. So along those lines, we have a vision for the Portneuf River, and when we think about how we are going to maintain our stormwater, and it's a city maintenance, and there's private maintenance, and there are streams that need to be maintained, and there's other interest, is beginning the process of saying how is every drainage, so Pocatello Creek drainage, the City Creek drainage, the Center Street drainage area, starting that process of doing some integrated planning. And for that, I hope to go out to some consultants soon to help us guide through that process. And that's commonly done with engineering projects, stormwater projects. And the first phase of that was getting a stormwater model, and we have completed that. So that was 2017, get the model done, and now we can begin that process. Continuing to implement design standards on city projects with engineering and streets, doing stormwater mapping, monitoring, code enforcement, and then lots of education and outreach. So the Environmental Fair and Water Week are the big splashy ones, but a lot of working with various community groups, serving on committees, and figuring out how to engage community members in stormwater activities. I have a lovely, pretty picture. Take a break. So there's the river vision. You've seen this picture before, so we'll just go through it. So some key accomplishments. So started working on a stormwater management plan to increase clarity of responsibilities between the Science and Environment Division, Street Division, and Engineering. So a lot of facilitation of how do we work through this utility that isn't like water, where you really often have one, or sewer, where there's one and maybe engineering gets involved, but it's multiple entities with stormwater. And so the coordination is a significant effort, especially as we start thinking about our co-permittees. And then some integrated planning, pretty exciting that we do this river vision and it's actually being used. And so having community members point to it and city staff and thinking about planning and implementation of projects that are beyond it and saying, okay, this is what the river vision says, and moving from that. And then doing some work on contaminated sites, especially with Union Pacific Railroad. They are wrapping up their site investigation with DEQ and the EPA, which is looking at groundwater contamination. My focus has been on a lot of the stormwater runoff that is associated with that, and trying to include that in this process, even though it's not in the design of it, and making sure that their site investigation accurately characterizes the stormwater runoff that comes off of Union Pacific property and what they're responsible for, and laying the groundwork so we as a city can better work with them in the future to contain that. We have an incredibly large amount of impervious surface that Union Pacific owns that we receive no money for stormwater, so it doesn't come into taxes at all. So it's a lot of impervious surface contributing to our system, some of which is pretty contaminated with some oils and phosphorus and whatever else has been on their railroad tracks. And so reviewing those documents is also the tribes, focusing on water quality, groundwater, and the city has been the other entity. And then our key accomplishments has been really decreasing sediment entering the Portneuf River and Pocatello. That's really the sum game, and also reducing the volume of stormwater flowing into the Portneuf from Pocatello, and we have data thanks to DEQ on that, and that's really exciting because if there's less dirty water going in, that means there's less dirt going in, and so that's been a major excitement. Did I miss one?
I think you did.
Did I do it backward? Oh, I did it. I did it backwards. Sorry. Okay. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. I should number these pages. So also did asset management. My stormwater technician has been also working with the street department. We are pretty close with completing a stormwater map, which is a permit requirement. Very close for city facilities and close-ish for private facilities. And so the private infrastructure is going to be a focus moving forward. We are required by our forthcoming permit to make sure private infrastructure is being managed and maintained. We've also, this is all used in our modeling and then mapping and then drainage plans, and so this map is a pretty critical first step. A lot of work goes into increasing community understanding and engagement with the river. So the river vision was a key part of this, that we do have a river in Pocatello. You know, it is running through Old Town, and what the community wants to see. You know, it's one thing to sit here and say, EPA says we have to do it. It's another thing if we can also say, hey, and you know, community members want this. And so how can we use the EPA requirements to get what the community wants? And then trying to make sure that the quality of the plan submitted by engineering firms is up to city standards, so starting some engagement and education with them. So also reducing erosion and sediment coming onto city streets and improving on-site retention of stormwater. Okay, here we go. All right. So things to keep in mind with Pocatello, and these are really similar to every year. We have steep slopes with fine loess, that's baby powder basically, soils that easily erode. They clog our facilities. And so it's a challenging environment. You know, we don't have steep rocky soils. We have steep soils with these fine, steep slopes with these fine soils. Our valley floor has old infrastructure. It can't handle more stormwater coming into it. And so that's a challenge. Most of our rainfall comes as snow, so getting things to grow right now is hard. And thinking about when stormwater fills our system, it's important to think when the rain comes. And under the city is our aquifer, that is our drinking water. And so as we're sending stormwater into the ground, we also want to make sure that it is being treated to a quality where we can later drink it. And so that is critical. And then finally, the Portneuf River is not only is it listed for sediment and E. coli and phosphorus and nitrogen and oil and grease through town, but it's also a flood control project. So we have a lot of federal oversight of this river that just complicates things and complicates what we can do and can't do with the river. So issues coming forward. We are supposed to get a new stormwater permit in fiscal year 2019 starting October 1. I haven't seen an official draft yet, so I'm not fully certain that will happen anymore, but we'll see. So that is going to require a bunch of work. And so you'll be seeing budgets that are reflecting this permit. It's going to require that we have stormwater O&M manuals, and we are working on that right now. So we know what should be in the permit, and making sure that City of Pocatello, Chubbuck, Bannock County, that how we maintain our systems meets these EPA standards, and we have policies in place that are in writing that we can all see. It requires an update to our monitoring plans, as well as an update to our memorandum of understanding with our co-permittees. So that's just a long process of making sure that our monitoring meets EPA standards, and that Bannock County and Chubbuck and ITD and ISU and the City of Chubbuck, and City of Pocatello are all in agreement. And then it requires developing a stormwater management plan. And so we will have a plan for how we're going to meet permit compliance, and that will get updated every year. And so again, all the co-permittees, all of these city departments need to be in agreement. And so probably one of the things you're hearing a lot from me is this coordination effort. And so a lot of what my time gets spent on is facilitating these various efforts by folks who have very different bosses than I do, perhaps.
This permit, is it going to come from EPA or IDWR?
It's going to come from EPA.
So it's not part of the transfer of services?
It will be part of what eventually comes from DEQ, but it isn't slated to come from DEQ till 2023 or 22. And so the intent is to have EPA do this first one, and then DEQ would take it over. And I think even if it drags back another year, it still will. And I think DEQ would appreciate having this get out the door and they get something that's consolidated. So.
Rather than take on everything at once, they're going to start with the wastewater, and then a few years down the road, then they'll take over the stormwater as well.
Yeah, stormwater is the last piece of the puzzle that's going to be transferred over to DEQ. There's going to be a need for increased staffing and equipment that we're working through. So there's O&M of city facilities. That's obviously in the street department right now, as well as private facilities. And so with the vacant position, looking to probably replace that with somebody who can oversee that private facility operations and maintenance and make sure that's happening. And design review and inspection. You know, one of the critical things is if we are going to maintain facilities and if we're going to have standards by which private companies maintain their own facilities, well, they need to be installed correctly. It's really hard to maintain something that was poorly installed. It's just a costly cycle. And so making sure that that design review within the city is adequately funded and staffed with all of these requirements. And so again, that's sort of an ongoing conversation with engineering and supporting their efforts. Our existing program is fine, but if construction ramps up, we're all going to be tight. I mean, it's going to be hard to manage erosion and sediment control and post-construction. Building and engineering are doing a lot of that work. Science and environment is doing a lot of erosion and sediment control as well, but if there's increased demands on that time, we're going to need additional staffing. And there's significant deferred maintenance, both on the city side, although that's really decreased in recent years, and on the private side. And that impacts flooding as well as water quality. And so that's just a challenge of getting through that hump. And went to a stormwater operations and maintenance conference last fall, and it's really enlightening because this is the new issue. There's a lot of communities that have stormwater that's combined with sanitary sewer, which means when you have overflows, you get overflows of both, right? And so they're under big mandates to not have those overflows. And so they're putting in a lot of stormwater infrastructure in the last 10 years, and they're suddenly having to maintain it. And so the cost of maintenance is really becoming a big topic, and how you efficiently maintain your system and how you design your system for better maintenance, and when you pay the costs. You know, it's sort of, well, the initial cost is nothing compared to the maintenance often. And so that's just an ongoing issue that we're going to need to deal with our 200 plus stormwater ponds, and then all the pipes and such, and then the private side as well. And so that'll be coming forth. Funding for stormwater is not tied to the services provided. So it's highly dependent on tax revenues. You know, there's plan review and inspection fees for erosion and sediment control, but not for designing and installing these stormwater ponds and pipes. And so that's problematic in that it often impacts the value of that people place on these, doing these inspections. And there is talk of, you know, a stormwater utility fee. And so one of the things we're starting right now is I have an intern this summer who's mapping all of our impervious area. And so right now she's in the office drawing parking lots and circles where there's planter strips. And so that's a big critical step to someday support a utility fee. You know,
I'll be off the council then.
What?
I'll be off the council then.
There you go. So I'm not going to push that any further. Just really note that we're trying to lay the groundwork for if you ever want to go there. But it is a challenge with, you know, we do a lot of stormwater that's not tied to the fees, to the services provided. You know, we do design and review and inspection that comes from of new development that comes from existing taxpayers for stormwater. We pay for maintenance, from tax budgets that Union Pacific Railroad doesn't pay anything for maintenance of stormwater facilities. And so all of the ISU, all of the schools don't pay anything for maintenance of stormwater. It's obviously a policy decision, but that's, I see as a potential issue. And there's not many options. That's the other challenge, I think. So the other issue is, as we think about our groundwater and we think about sanitary sewer and stormwater and surface water, is a need to really integrate these, not so much integrating the divisions, but integrating our plans. How are we going to integrate what we're doing for stormwater with what the water department needs for water quality and water quantity amounts, and just making sure that we are all moving in the same direction, so that I, for instance, aren't talking about improving water flow in Mink Creek, and the water department's talking about taking the Mink Creek flow and sending it into the aquifer, and suddenly, we're going in different directions, and just making sure we're on the same page with our planning efforts. And so that's sort of upcoming issue, and it's common. You see a lot of communities now addressing it in this way of saying, let's integrate all of our various water because it's the same water, whether, and really understanding, okay, with our wastewater, where is it going to go? Can we inject it into the aquifer? How does that impact our aquifer? How does it impact our recreation opportunities? How does that impact our stormwater? And then finally, the river vision is going to cost a lot of money to implement, but there's certainly costly not to implement in terms of missed opportunities, in terms of the maintenance we have to do anyway. And there's going to be, even if it's not city funds paying for something, there's going to be staff time for facilitating the process, project management as well.
I want to go to your integrated planning. How much, well, first of all, let's start with the big issue.
Okay.
We got blindsided last year with a little deal. Nobody knew who was drawing the permit and stuff like that. It was when the oil mixture got dumped.
Yep.
Have we got all of our departments integrated into talking to you about permitting?
We are, so it's I think last year, one of the things that also got, want to address is, so there's the permit process, and I'd say we're pretty good with the permit process. There certainly can be more oversight with the permit process, but the other issue that comes up is when we do things on city property, and making sure that those get an environmental review. Often when a private developer comes in, there's a lot more review that happens than on a city project, and so we're starting that process of making sure that if there's a city project, that it does undergo this environmental review, so that we can understand, I can apply my knowledge about potential contaminant concerns and what needs to happen. I'd say we aren't fully there yet, but we've been playing around with various models of how to do that.
So the least departments are realizing that everything I do could have an effect somewhere else.
Yes, yes, I would say, and it's trying to set it up so it's not dependent on individual people, because otherwise, you have one person who's really good at it and they leave, and somebody else has which is really what happened with Craft Road, is, somebody takes over and you don't know that this is a problem, and, when it was started, nobody who's at the city now was here when the Craft Road was designed, as far as I know, and so trying to make sure there's a process.
That's going to be addressed in our new fleet facility.
And
too.
yes,
Okay,
yep,
so we're doing some of that integration. Second question, when you talk about the water department, how much of your effort looks at our groundwater, particularly what we're doing with our Johnny Creek septic systems and other septic systems in our city, getting nitrates and
Yeah, not a lot. So I've been in a lot of conversations with ISU on the research they've been doing about nitrates and pharmaceuticals in drinking water, and looking at up Mink Creek and Johnny Creek. But that is really also becomes a council direction item in terms of me saying this is a priority and we want to move forward on it. So we've been supporting ISU's research, and I see the next step is really trying to summarize what we know today. We have there's a lot of information going around about contaminant concerns, and in 2008, I'm guessing, maybe it was 2010-11, we did a groundwater technical advisory group with the county, and had major water users and a lot of technical support to understand what our opportunities and threats were to groundwater in the lower Portneuf Valley, and that could probably be revitalized and say, all right, let's get a summary of what we know now, and so that decisions could be made about how to move forward.
We're just now discovering, well, not just now, but we're starting to pay attention to it. The effect of pharmaceuticals getting into the system, and particularly through septic tanks.
Yeah, and there was two ISU students doing some research on it, so doing research on impacts on fetal growth potentially, so early research, and and then one on what kind of pharmaceuticals and other contaminants you might find in drinking water wells. Our city wells tested great. They're clear. We have, so those were fine. There were some private wells well upstream that were smaller wells close to a septic tank that certainly had some levels that were elevated, not at levels of concern, but it's an emerging issue. And
well, we just had some conversation last week about the I forget the chemical that was in one well, and now it looks like it's not as prevalent, and so TCE.
Yes. Yep.
And we can go back.
So I, continue to be in conversations with the DQ and the landfill about their efforts to readdress the TCE plume at the landfill, and as well as their contacts with the private well owners who live near that TCE plume and down by the landfill. So sometime, but I see that is really where this integration is important, so that there's a consistent effort and a ability for direction to be given, so we're not sort of going off in too many.
And right now, you're pretty overwhelmed with all the other stuff, and we don't have council direction or capacity to look at groundwater and to monitor that as we might be challenged to do.
Yeah, I would say one, we certainly need a consultant to help us with that, and then two, I need to get a second person hired, which I have a vacant position.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna go to the numbers. Okay, so overall increase in salaries and benefits of $7,308, and then a decrease of $5,000, which is because she moved money into transfers for future capital needs. So overall flat. Again, her funding sources, she has some licenses and permits, intergovernment money from ITD, county, and Chubbuck, and then the rest comes from interfund, and it is 16% water and 84% WPC is how that interfund is charged. And there are 2 full-time employees. Like she said, one of them is vacant at this time. Are there any questions?
I would just, we're discussing generally, and this is mainly budget, but I think there's a couple practices that we need to be looking at. One, I don't think the city should, unless it's impossible to do otherwise, authorize any more septic tanks within the city limits. 2, I'm aware that some of the companies who do hospice care and stuff like that, they go ahead and just dump the drugs down in the toilet. That's the easiest way for them to dispose of them. And I think we need to set a policy that they shouldn't be doing that. So, I just think that they should find a way to dispose of them. And we have a disposal capability here through City Hall, Police Department. I think those 2 things are critical issues moving forward because one, we know that our nitrate level is going to increase and increase, and we're not sure when we'll get septic tanks in the Johnny Creek area, but we do have the capability of saying you got to get on our sewer system and some other places. And then really we need to head off this pharmaceutical invasion through septic tanks, and even we don't even clean it up if it goes through our system out at the wastewater treatment. So we need to just be preemptive in that and get ahead of the game. I think if we did a couple of those things, we'd be looking to the future for a long ways.
So yeah, I can look and see what other communities are doing with hospice. I'm sure there are some standards that other communities have implemented with outreach to hospice regarding proper disposal of those. And we can certainly have this technical committee look at some other opportunities for septic tanks right now. So the Health District is the organization that approves whether or not it is technically feasible to have a septic tank in a particular spot, so are the soils okay, and is your building size appropriate to the tank size. And the city currently says you cannot have one if you're within 300 feet of your property is within 300 feet of a sewer line. And so that would be where we would modify that particular amount, just for those who might not be less familiar with that.
They're not asking for any increase in budget authority or fee increases. So are there any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to go into a little discussion about property abatement. We currently don't have a fund for like nuisance property abatement. Like if someone's yard is super messy, we have to go clean it up, weeds, things like that. We do have a fund for dangerous property abatement, like the Satterfield property that had fire, the Monarch building, things like kind of bigger things that we have to take care of. So what we're talking about right now is just the general property abatement that we have to do for people's properties. So the current process is a citizen files a complaint with code enforcement about the appearance of a neighboring property. And then code enforcement notifies the property owner and the tenant, if applicable, of the complaint. There are fines issued if the property owner fails to comply and clean up the property. And if they still fail to comply, I'm not sure how many fines they give them, but they do issue a citation and the city cleans up the property at that time. The street department currently is in charge of the cleanup, and the police department is then billed for the cleanup from the street department. Any questions on the process? So we just have a few before and after pictures. You can see, I mean, it's kind of a little bit hard to see with the fence, but just all the garbage back there that was cleaned up and how nice it looks afterwards. There's another property that you can just see here that has a lot of garbage. And then this is after the cleanup by the street department. So it looks a lot nicer.
How many notices are issued?
Tom Kirkman, Deputy Public Works Director. I apologize, I can get you that information. Code enforcement, so what ends up happening is there'll either be complaints or they'll notice it. And then code enforcement goes through their process. I can get that information from them for you. When it gets to that process of where no one's responding and getting it cleaned, then we have a crew go over and then they abate the property. But I'll get you that information. I don't have it.
Well, and I can tell you with these properties here, for example, there were a number of citations given, there were a number of court appearances, and before we can go in and do this kind of an abatement, we have to have the permission from the judge to be able to do so. So, and the judges don't typically say, you got a ticket for that, go ahead and go do that. So this is a process that takes many months, and a number of tickets. These people have got to be in front of those judges a couple times before. Well, I would say more than a couple times before they do that. But we have been working with the judges to try to help us implement our ordinances a little bit easier and faster, but it's a long and slow process. And so I can say that, for example, on this here, we were able to go in and do this. They have now moved back in there, and it's starting to decrease again. And so we start the process all over again as we have to. So, but it takes some time.
The way I understand the process, it's fairly cumbersome, and code enforcement takes that, and then when that options are all extinguished, that's when they get a hold of us and we come in and abate the property. And that's where it got kind of tricky. Last year we were looking at getting just a dedicated abatement crew, but funds were tight, and so we took in and we hired 6 seasonals within the street department. What made the process a little difficult is street funds are restricted, so they can only be used for streets. So whenever we do this process, we have to send a bill to the police department. And then the police department, there was really never a line item dedicated for that fund. There is a fund through building, but that's for dangerous properties, and it's really not proper to this kind of procedure.
Can I ask you a question about the second example? That property is in my neighborhood, and I pass by it every day, and I've noticed, all of the debris and items in the yard, but also some really troubling things happening with the house itself, boarding up of doors and windows and everything. And I'm wondering, where does that part come in? Is that part of property abatement, and what's the legality there?
Right, and we may have to, that's really not my expertise. We might get Lynn or the code enforcement department. I don't know if we can get them here. We kind of just work on the outside of the building. Once it's inside, it kind of goes into a whole different world there for us. Okay. So we can get you that information, though.
Is the property owner or tenant notified of who made the complaint?
Like I said, I'm sorry.
I don't believe they're notified on who makes the complaint. No, sometimes but I don't. They are. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they aren't. But this, for example, it's not a secret who makes the complaint. Everybody in the neighborhood's made the complaint.
We'll get somebody from code enforcement. Sorry, we thought they would be here. So. We're just the guys that clean it up. We don't.
Well, we're the ones that's got to clean up your cleanup.
That's right. That's right.
But this really, truly has been a problem that we've had. There's a number of places that are like this that we end up in front of we cite them and we cite them and we cite them and we cite them, and they go in front of the judge time and time and time again, and the judge finally gives us permission. We do ask often if we can just get this done, and we're very strong about personal property rights and stuff in Idaho, and so it's difficult to get to this point.
It goes across some other department lines also. Animal control has commented in terms of large numbers of cats in houses.
Well, and I was thinking about fire too. I mean, when you've got doors and windows that are barred and boarded, I mean, if there was something to happen, how would they even get in?
And I think that actually occurred on this property.
Well, this property, it did occur. We tried like crazy, and I think finally that got us what we were able to get in and be able to get this cleaned up was there was a fire. Our fire department did a great job at putting it out when maybe we should have protected the structures on the side of it, but they got it put out, and then this house, they boarded the windows up and stuff, and our building department's gone in and condemned the house, and so now we can cite people if they go into the house, but we still have people that doesn't stop them from being outside. of the property. The structure itself gets condemned, the property doesn't. And so
it seems to me that we've had so many different issues and so many different directions and tracks we take that we ought to sit down and really study this and decide how we're going to do the whole process, from having to cut overhanging limbs to how we take care of sidewalks, to how we take care of a house that's damaged by fire. All of that, we need to just have this staged by our ordinance, step 1, step 2. And if we aren't getting satisfaction in misdemeanor court after 3 infractions, maybe it needs to become a felony and move to another court.
And
I don't know how to do this, but we have hired an expert. Well,
and that process is.
I will say that's what we've been trying to do. We've been trying to get ahead of this and do it, and it's really truly a matter of being able to implement the ordinances.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. We don't have enough structure and strategy in our ordinances, because I believe we could not get the person to respond up in the Highland area because it was a misdemeanor. I think if it was a felony, we could have extradited her here. We can't on a felony? Yeah.
Please come up, yeah, because we have gone down this road. That's the thing, is we've gone down this road. We get in front of the judges, and ultimately it's the courts that decide what we can and can't do.
We can't extradite somebody on a felony from a neighboring state.
We can enforce codes. Jared Johnson, city attorney. We can enforce codes that we create as a municipality up to a misdemeanor. So we can't create felonies because those become state jurisdiction. A felony means you could spend more than a year in jail in prison, or more than a year in prison, not
if you're
jail.
Compromised, and so we can't make a felony.
No.
By our jurisdiction.
No.
So.
But what we can do, and what we go ahead. Sorry.
Can the county create a felony?
No.
So only the state law can create a felony.
That's right.
Okay.
I have a comment on that same situation that you referenced. I think there's a distinction between actually a citation and just a fine, and maybe our new city attorney would want to comment on this, but I had conversations with our previous legal staff that is not here anymore, and I was surprised on that property to learn that that owner had only been issued a $100 fine one time, and we have the ability to fine more than that, and just it had never gone down that. So I think when I inquired about it, they got assessed another fine, but I think we could maybe get a little more aggressive with actually,
we need to up the ante to where
doing the fines. And yeah, maybe it's not worth it in that situation to have tried to, go after her criminally, but we could certainly do fines. So I think we could.
And then we
have
could lien the
that.
property with fines, can't we?
Well, we can't lien the property with fines. We can assess fines.
We can assess.
We can only lien if we've actually expended funds on the property through the abatement process.
So we could just find a way to do what we need to do to make it safe and make the neighborhood have its own integrity, and whatever we have to do, then we could charge for that.
Yes and no. As the mayor mentioned, there's property rights versus community rights that we have to look at that are competing sometimes. And so we have to make sure that we have a process in place that's constitutional, that doesn't violate people's property rights. And if we go through that process that's constitutional, then yes, we can get to that point where we have on some of these properties where we go in and do what's necessary, and then we can attach to the property.
Well, right now it seems like the property right sets with whoever owns the property, and nobody next to them have any property rights.
Mm-hmm. And that's where it comes into the nuisance law. And as long as we go through that process that's constitutional, I have no problem with it. But as far as increasing the fines without them having the right to have their day in court for those fines, that's a tough dynamic to consider, because they have to be able to contest that. We might see it from our perspective, and they might have a different perspective. And that's why the citation route is most appropriate in these more serious cases, because then they have the right to come in, and then the judge is the decision maker, or the jury in some cases, and they've gone through the due process rights that they have as citizens. I believe that the process in place right now in Pocatello is a good process. It's just not the priority crime on some judges' dockets, and so
we try to work with them and we try to work with the other side and ultimately reach a resolution that ends up with getting the property cleaned up versus the person put in jail for up to 6 months.
Well, somewhere we've got to show that we have the backbone to take care of our community. Yeah,
but I think we are showing that when we're citing people, we are showing that, and it gets in front of the courts, and the courts are the ones that are making that ultimate decision whether or not we can enforce what we would like to or not. And so, really, truly, we are showing that we've got the backbone to do that when we're adding citations to and continuing to do so. It's just it's not a matter of the city's doing it. I think that the city's got a good process at this point. It literally lands in the court's hands, and the courts have got to. It would be nice for the courts to be able to.
It's easy to blame the courts, but it's also some of our responsibility to create enough energy of going and finding and responding to these problem properties. We've got one in my neighborhood that just goes on and on and on and on, and we have not had the energy and the follow through from the city to get that taken care of. That lot's out of compliance right now.
If it's out of compliance and we're doing what we're doing and it gets you can give somebody a fee to the courts take it, they pay the fee, then you do it again and again, and it falls into the court's hands. There have been a number of times that we have.
My side of it is, Brian, it shouldn't be the neighbors that have to go after problem property. I 100% agree with that. All the time. And if it's out of compliance after 15 years, we ought to be continually monitoring that property as a city and taking it to the judicial system right now. We shouldn't be waiting for somebody else to say, I've had enough, I'm tired of it, I live in this neighborhood, I'm going to file a complaint.
One thing that if I may.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One thing over the last year that we've been working on as a city is kind of revamping how code enforcement works. And I think it's working better than it ever has right now. What was happening before, and like I said, I'm not an expert on this, it would be the police department on this, but every complaint, everything that was brought to any attention that was a code violation just went to basically 2 code enforcement officers. And they were just kind of overwhelmed with it. So stuff was getting missed. They were just overwhelmed. And so we went through and we looked at all of the codes and we said, okay, this department's in charge of this department's in charge of this, and kind of tried to spread that load out among the departments. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's made a really big step in the right direction to remedying some of these issues you're talking about. I know on the stuff that we're responsible at the street department or sanitation, that's a code-related violations, we try and be very proactive on that so that we don't have to rely on the neighbor getting irritated and making the complaint. I don't know if that helps or not, but we have been working on processes throughout the year with the mayor of how to smooth that process a little bit more.
Could we get a list, I mean, by we, I mean the city council, could we get a list of what specific issues fall within specific departments? Because we get a lot of complaints from citizens or people saying, hey, what about this? And I would just want to make sure that we are referring them to the right place rather than telling them to call the police department and then it has to go, would that be okay to get something like that put together?
Absolutely. The easy way to do that, though, and the easy way to put a list together is what we have done is if you are responsible for a city ordinance in your department, you're responsible for the enforcement of that ordinance. Where before, if there was a code enforcement issue, they would they'd just send it to the 2 people, and then they would have to figure out what ordinance it fell under. They'd have to understand it.
Right, but I'm just saying that like a citizen doesn't always know which department is in charge of which thing. So if we kind of had like a list, that would maybe be.
And Shawnee's been really great about that as kind of the gatekeeper for that. As people call, she's got that list. I'm sure we could get you guys lists if you'd like. And so then she sends that complaint or whatever it may be to the proper department. But that list exists, yes.
Sorry, if I wanted to add, along with these processes and these strategies we have, I think we should also consider an education campaign about responsible citizenship in the community in general. Like just just as a soft way to get into the community about like responsibilities as a citizen. Pick up after your dog, clean your yard, like, you know, whatever comes under that, but just something subtle, but it's there. And then it becomes part of our culture in the city.
I hate to say it, Bina, but I think you're being awful optimistic about the people that are causing these problems. I don't think they care.
I think there's a lot of them that don't care, and
But we do our part, you know.
we've done some education pieces, and you can always educate more and more. You really truly can. Well, I don't know what the solution is. I know that we do what we do, and I know that it ends up in front of the courts, and then I know that we end up doing what we do again and again and again, and so it's a matter of figuring it out. But what we're talking about right now is you're trying to find out what we want to do with this, right? We're not going to solve the world's problems sitting up here in the next 35 hours. Probably, and so we probably need to figure out what we want to do here. A few years ago, the council talked about putting $15,000 for an abatement program. We did that, and it's one, not enough, and two, it kind of got spread throughout the city, we think, and so the real question is, where do you want the money, and how much is the money that we want? Is that what?
So currently, the issues with our current process is that police doesn't have the budget authority to reimburse street. They just don't have it in their budget. And property abatement, like Tom said, is not a proper use of street funds. We do get some collection of fines and citations, potentially liens placed on properties, but the money that we're getting in isn't enough to cover all the work that we're currently doing. So there's not like a revenue stream to help us cover. It's not rolling over. A lot of these liens will get placed, and then we might not even get any money after the house sells. It just kind of depends on the situation. So basically, we're asking to
How do we not get money if we've liened the house?
If they sell the property for less and we're not a high lien
Well,
holder.
we're not in line.
Yeah.
Because we're usually at the end.
Low on this.
So it goes in order.
And finance is exploring all those options. I mean, they're doing it, but unfortunately, we haven't seen the benefit of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it needs to become a tax. Would we move up in line then?
How harsh of a punishment can we give him?
Well, if it's a tax, I think you get it for.
So basically, we came up with a few solutions. We could add 50,000 was a number that was thrown out there, or in the amount that's determined by council into the police budget for work done by street. And then street would bill the police department for the work that's done. That's the cleanest way to do it. Or the council could decide to just discontinue property abatement, which doesn't sound like something you guys want to do. We're just looking for a way to be able to pay for it. I think what happened last year was that we were doing these and realized that there was no money for it, so we kind of had to put a hold on it because we don't have a way to pay for it. So we're just asking the council if you would be able to determine how much we want to put in a budget so that we can do abatements. It's basically the amount, and once we hit that amount, we would have to be done for the year. So we don't want to make it super low, but you know, it's kind of just,
well,
we're not quite sure at this point.
If it were a priority for us and we say we put 50,000 and it got exhausted, we could always open the budget again too.
You can, yeah.
And to give you a little context, if I may, you were asking earlier about if everybody's tracking those, you know, the different things. So just to give you some numbers, we abated 15 different locations. So there's two different kinds of abatements. There's the mow the weeds, weed eat the fence. Those are averaging just about $200 to $300 in labor and materials. So materials, we end up, if we have to get a dumpster, we need to pay sanitation for that. For the bigger ones, like you've seen pictures of, they're averaging about $3,500 each. And so last year we did about a little under $8,000 worth of abatements. And then it got to the point where, okay, we're expending a lot of money. We better figure out where to get that money from. And so we kind of just put everything in limbo so that we could come and talk to you about which direction that you see moving forward.
In my estimation, if we have others that we should be taking care of, we should open the budget. Because right now we're several months out from the end of this budget year and you're telling me we've exhausted whatever you felt comfortable with. So we ought to open the budget on this.
Okay.
That's my feeling.
Well, and I agree. The key is where do we open it? Where do we put it? I think the police department's the right spot for it.
I think the police department's the right spot, but I'm going to fix now and for the future, not for the future.
Well, we do have capital contingency money that we could use for the remainder of this year. We're just looking for guidance on what to do for fiscal year 19, what we want to build into the budget.
I think we should build something in, like you said, but I'm also in favor of, we can even put a little bit more than that in, because I would rather not run out and then have to wait for you to bring it to us at an amendment to the budget. I would rather have it in there, and if we don't expend all of that, then it's there for the next year, and we know we don't have to budget as much in the future, but then we're not holding up the process.
That would be great.
So I don't know what that number would be, but...
Council, is $50,000 the right number?
It's a good start. I think it's going to take 75.
I know I just pulled 50 out of the sky because 15's not enough.
I know as right-of-way maintenance, as we go and clean up alleys and stuff, there are a lot of properties in town. So I think the higher you want to make that number, I don't think that money's going to go to waste. I think it'll get used.
And if we have council's permission, anything we don't use, we can move into just the capital savings account to put it in there, and it will be earmarked for property abatement. That's something that we can do pretty easy.
If those abatements are paid, does that money come back to the police department then?
Yes.
It would reimburse the fund.
So it could be a rolling fund.
Yes.
Potentially.
How do you feel about the 50,000?
For me personally, we'll take as much as we can.
Well, I understand that, but based on what you've been doing, so far, do you feel that that's low or?
I think it's low. I think it's okay, but 75 would be great. I just think that if we give the tools to these code enforcement officers to know that we can speed this process up, and we have a crew that's on standby ready to go, I think it's going to just help everybody out. I don't have a magic number though. It's hard to tell. The code enforcement officers are the ones that are seeing it every day. I don't see it every day, but we could, when we get in touch with them, we could get a better understanding of where they're at with it.
I'm going to tell you, council, I thought $50,000 everybody was going to go, we got to cut that back a little bit and stuff like that. And so I really honestly felt like 50,000 was a good number, but if you want 75, I think.
Or could we go somewhere in between?
I think if it were me, quite honestly, I would leave it at 50,000, and then I would just have us watch it, and when we're getting close to that, come back in front of the council, and you can then reorganize it if we need to.
Well, and it may be a good opportunity to give you an update of how it's going, you know, if we need to come and ask.
Because we need to have some sense of how much we are spending and how much we need to spend. So that.
But is that going to hold us up right in the middle of the summer, which is the prime time to do it? And
it shouldn't.
Okay.
The abatements in the winter pretty much just go away for the most part is what's been our experience. We've only been doing these for a year. It was Parks and Recs before. And then we
covered up.
So
that's what I'm saying.
It really is.
You know, if we run out of money in July, then we got to wait for a budget amendment, and then we're.
Well, we can do a budget amendment pretty fast.
I don't think that it will. Remember, we set aside 15,000. 15,000.
We're 15 to 50.
15 to 50 is a big difference in
twice a year.
And so I think we're okay at 50 personally right now, and then we'll see. I don't see it holding it up, and if we start getting close, then they can come in and talk to us beforehand. We can give some approval and then make the budget amendment when we make the budget amendment.
Well, and we can kind of look at, what happens this summer, and maybe come back in the May-June amendment, knowing going into the summer that we're probably going to need more money, and that wouldn't hold anything up because we would do it in June and it would be there. So that is a possibility also.
I'm good with 50.
I'm good with 50.
Solution one it is.
Okay, 50 in the police department budget for abatement.
Okay.
Tom's loving the idea of spending the police department budget.
We're soldiers. We just go and do it.
All right. Any other questions on that? Thank you very much. Okay, last one. We're gonna go fast. Okay, so we're gonna look at non-departmental, which is in the general fund, basically pays for things that don't really pertain to any certain department. So the mission is to provide support to city functions and supporting organizations that cannot be identified within our existing fund and department structure. So for FY17, these are some of the dues and memberships that we paid. Associated Taxpayers of Idaho, $225. Association of Idaho Cities, a little under $22,000. Sister Cities, $780. Chamber of Commerce, $4,500, and CCOG dues were a little under $10,000. Other professional services, BPO annual support, $35,000. College work study, we have budgeted about $13,000. We only spent about $5,500 last year. School district crossing guards, $75,882, and then other professional services, which was for actually the digitizing of some documents, was about $6,300.
Could you give me the definition of the acronym BPO?
I think it's a bandit planning organization. And these are contributions which we give to different organizations. So you can see the Aid for Friends, $8,000, Family Services Alliance, $14,500. Senior Citizen Support, we give them $12,000, and then we also pay for their utilities. So that's where the total of about $34,000 is coming from. Free Clinic is a little under $5,000, and we paid Sister Cities Japanese $1,250. Meals on Wheels was about $23,000, and the Tourism Bureau Chamber of Commerce was $15,000.
And that $15,000 is for the visitor center, if I remember right.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. And then we also had some transfers out of this account. This is where the transit support comes from. We transferred out $515,780 last year. We also, for video services, a little under $90,000, and then we had some unexpended capital contingency from 17, about $280,000. That just went into a savings fund for you guys to use as you wish. So the measures of effectiveness and key accomplishments, we provided membership for employees or financial support to many different organizations in the city. Some of the issues and concerns that we have is a support to the senior center does include the utilities and cable service. Also, we pay for the utilities to support the free clinic, and utilities are increasing at this point. So it's kind of an issue or a concern that we have that we might have to absorb that within this budget. Within non-departmental, we also have Economic Development Division. We do have the budget authority for an Economic Development Manager, which is about $120,000 for salaries and benefits. That position is currently vacant. The 120 also includes some operating costs of about $7,500, which would probably need to be looked at if we do hire for that position. We also make a contribution to Bannock Development Corporation for $75,000 and a contribution to the Ready Group for $35,000. Okay, we're gonna look at the numbers. Okay, so non-departmental, we actually went down because of the getting rid of the video services subsidy transfer. So the budget went down $174,673. And then in the economic development, we still do have that position built in. That's just an increase just for the potential that we did hire somebody in 18, the potential where they would be in 19. So that's why it went up a little bit, plus the insurance increase. Everything else in there has remained flat.
I thought we were told that if we hired an economic development person, it cost us a lot more than that. We just did that last year to get to a point in this year where we could hire late in the year.
And I'm not sure what that position is graded at. Do you know?
In other words, we didn't set the salary then. We set the potential to hire late in the year. And
Heather Buchanan, Human Resources Director. So that would be the salary position and the benefit cost. What we didn't account for was the operating cost of the position. That is a department that is expensive to fund because there's usually expensive travel. There's a lot of meals out. They need, a pretty decent office when you start bringing people in. So what we didn't account for was the overall operating cost that we would need to look at.
And so that is the right number?
I believe so.
I'm pretty sure it was graded at that.
Because we slotted it this year because we knew we just built the operating into the personnel costs because we knew it wouldn't be funded for the full year.
That's where that 75.56 in purchase services. I think that was the difference from what council said that we could spend on that position to what the cost was. That was the difference that was there. But like Heather said, we would definitely need more to be able to operate.
And you've been able to categorize that position based
It's been slotted within the pay grade chart.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions on the numbers in there?
The dues that are projected there, are we pretty positive those will be the actual numbers? Do we know from those organizations their expectation of our payments?
I am not sure. I went back and looked at 17's budget and everything looked to be what we had budgeted for. There were slight differences, but I think a lot of them, the dues usually stay pretty close to the same. The contributions are the ones that we determine what we give to them.
I'm pretty sure the AIC dues are going to go up.
That was the one I was concerned about.
They're asking for a membership in a national water group, but they're asking all the participants in AIC to contribute to that, but the amount hasn't been set yet.
Okay.
So we're going to have to probably talk about this again in the future because I do know that like Family Services Alliance, we talked about that yesterday. They've asked for an increase. They sent a letter. We passed that on. We're not exactly sure where it got crossed over in Joyce's office, and so Ashley's looking for that. And if the dues for the Association of Idaho City, that's the first I've heard that they're going to be looking for the water thing. And so we'll have to talk about this probably again, but the dues in general probably aren't going to change a lot other than a couple of those things. The contribution now probably could change depending on the
Right, and we can look at that at tax solution also. That would be the time that we could add those in if we had a better idea of an amount.
We need to get that from the Association of Idaho Cities if they're going to be looking at that. We really need to get that and understand what that is before tax solution, which is in a few weeks.
About the second week of June, I think.
Second week in June.
I'll see if I can get that.
So that's something that we'll want to do that.
So the only thing that I could see when I was looking through this budget is it looked like the utilities for the free clinic were pretty close to $5,000 for the year. So in order to just cover that, I was looking to just increase that by $1,500. But it is up to you if you want to still provide that service to them. Just to kind of keep it to what we're actually spending.
If we don't decide this now with all of these, is there another point where we would be discussing these further? For example, senior citizen center,
Some of it will have to be discussed in the future, and if you want to talk about the senior center now, you surely could, but I think at the end of the day, the tax solution is where the rubber hits the road, and we're going to have to make a hard decision if you're going to increase that or if we're not.
Yeah, we don't have to make any decisions today if you don't choose to. We can
It's
do it.
when we get sticker shock.
Yeah, that's right. Some of that is. Well, we had some sticker shock last year, and we're having some of the sticker shock again this year with it. But yeah, your contributions are probably what's going to change the most.
Well, and I think on the contributions, one of the things we have to justify is what we think we achieve as a city through those contributions.
Sure.
We can't fund all the entities in town, and there's a couple of these that we are real clear about getting a benefit through our police department, and that's Family Service Alliance and Aid for Friends, because it allows our police officers not to spend so much time trying to figure out what should happen with someone.
Well, city government was never intended to be all things to all people, as you're saying.
No question.
So we can leave that out for now, and do you want me to bring it to tax solution?
I think it needs to be.
Guidance on that? Okay. I think that was it. Any questions?
Could be Tech Harper.
It will be tax heartburn. What do you mean could be?
There won't be solutions.
That's right.
Okay, we should be done then.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Ashley, for your hard work here. And with that, we are adjourned.